Holy smokes. Welcome, everybody. We are live. We are live. We are live. College football's peek around the corner with your host, Greg Flugar. Holy smokes. Holy smokes. I don't even know where to begin. We have got two massive stories on our hands. We were going to do a Saturday night is all right for PATC. There was no way on God's green earth we were going to wait for tonight. We might have to do another live show tonight, but we had to come on in as early as possible. Look, this is why we built the PATC community. This is why you all live in Heisman City. It's why this studio sits on the corner of Keith Jackson Parkway in Kurt Gowdy Avenue. It's why the Holy Smokes Theater sits on Keith Jackson Parkway. It's why on any given Saturday Sportsbook sits on Kurt Gowdy Avenue. It's why the courthouse is a few blocks behind the studio. It's why we built the community. It's why we are here. It's why we built in a call-in show. So you have a voice in what is going on, to give your opinion, to give your insight into the college football world. whether it's about your team, your conference, your commissioner, your backup left tackle, whether it's the throw me elbows because of my lousy picks against the spread. Greg the Cooler is going to arrive at some point in the 2024 season. This is why we built this together, is because of shows like this. Yeah, we break down every court case pleadings that's going on in Mecklenburg County, in Pickens County, in Leon County. We break down what's going on at the North Carolina Board of Governors. We break down everything in college football. We've broken down our ACC predictions, our Big 12 predictions. We're going to do Big 10 predictions on Monday. And we really break it down. All teams. This is why we built the community. Now, I got to tell you, we've got two massive stories today. I'm going to start with the Big Ten story. A Big Ten athletic director. A Big Ten athletic director. Talking about he has to make sure that his university, his athletic department, stays above the red line. Remember when we talked about, when we broke the news about USC calling the Big Ten and that was going to happen in the spring of 2022 and the rest of the country found out on June 30th? We used the line, the term, the phrase stratification line, because that was the term coming out of USC. They wanted to make sure they stayed above the stratification line to be able to compete at the highest level of college sports. There is an athletic director in the Big Ten that is having meetings talking about staying above the red line. Making sure if there is more consolidation, that his university does not get left behind. Holy smokes. He said it out in the open in a yesterday's interview. And we're going to break it wide open here at Peek Around the Corner. And then the other massive news is Josh Pate puts out more information on his gift about the glass of water. What does it mean? He gives out more information. He says the ACC reconstruction or reconfiguration, he used both words, that news on it very well could be imminent within the next 9 Saturdays. He would not be stunned if news breaks out about a new reconfigured, reconstructed ACC. He gives out some information. We're going to go through that. I'm not going to be able to play what Josh Pate said in his podcast, obviously. I don't own that content. But I broke it down. I wrote some stuff down. I do have a link in the description box on Josh Pate's interview and on the article about a certain athletic director in the Big Ten. The fear of more consolidation affecting that certain Big Ten university. And if it's affecting that Big Ten university, if they are having fears about more consolidation, you better believe there are other Big Ten schools that are having that same fear. And this athletic director is not a Johnny-come-lately. He's a Josh, been around for a long time. Before we get into these two massive stories, I am taking it the following. You can disagree. You can disagree in the chat room. Of course, you can tell me I'm wrong with a phone call later in the show. But I'm taking what Josh Whitman, the athletic director of Illinois, I think he is serious. I don't think he's just saying this for political reasons internally at Illinois. I don't know if he has a reason to worry. He probably does. I know there are other more imminent worries to worry about in the coming weeks, days, weeks, and months ahead. No question about it. We're not going to be talking about this particular story every single day. We're going to talk about it today, and then we'll probably let it go because there's so many other things going on. But I think it's important to talk about when a Big Ten athletic director who's been around for 8 years at an institution is saying, you better believe we are worried about the next wave of consolidation. Of course, that is news. In fact, that fear, that worry, and it can't be just isolated to Illinois, my goodness, and it probably isn't isolated just to some Big Ten schools, and there's probably some fear in some athletic departments in the SEC. But that fear may be possibly affecting this next potential wave of realignment. The implosion of the ACC. So I think it is something that we need to cover it. We absolutely need to cover it. And then look, when the Josh Pate post came out with the water shaking, with T-Rex making that water shake, coming out of the movie Jurassic Park, I don't know what it meant. I still don't quite know what it means. But I got to tell you, and I said it at the day that he put it out, Josh Pate, I was taking it seriously. I said this is not clickbait. He believes he has information, and he put it out. And he told you where he got it. He told you the information. We're going to be covering it. And I'm taking it seriously. I don't know where it leads to. I'm very interested to see what you all have to say. Again, if you are in the PATC community and you want to start a college football YouTube channel, my one advice to you is have a phone line, have calls in from your community. If that is one advice I could possibly give you, make sure you give your viewers the chance to call in and voice their opinion, to voice their insight, to voice their emotions. On game day Saturday, during the week practice, and during the off season when you have so much drama going on. I do not see enough of call-in shows in these college football YouTube channels. They all do a great job. All the hosts are way smarter than me, no question about it. But there's not enough phone calls. There's more, well, anyways. And one more thing. Thank you, Mick Stevens, for the super chat. Thank you for your generosity, helping us keep the lights on here at Peek Around the Corner. One more thing. I know I've been doing a bad job of limiting the phone conversations when someone calls in. I need to do a better job of that. However, today is not the day. There's not going to be a limit. Of course, don't rattle on for too long, but I cannot limit people's phone calls today. Not with Josh Pate saying what he said today. Not with Josh Whitman saying what he said yesterday. So, I'm going to be on live as long as it takes to take all your phone calls. So be patient. You're going to be able to get through the little general, the one who rules with an iron fist. The moderator has given me the green light. We can be on for as long as it takes. So please, if you can't get in with the phone call later on the show, keep it trying. Keep trying. Let me thank everybody who's just come on in. I know this is Saturday, noontime. Not a good time to have a YouTube channel, live show going on. I get it. But we could not wait. We could not wait. And I know people are saying, great, 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 great. This is why you have the most unsuccessful college football YouTube channel out there, because we never know when you're coming on. You're correct. You are correct. But unfortunately, we are not a changing. We go where the story goes. We come on live when we can get on the quickest time. Breaking news, covering all college football. So unfortunately, that's not going to change. But I do understand why we are the most unsuccessful college football YouTube channel in the country. Patrick, thank you for coming on in. Appreciate it. Alan Tran, R. Webb, Patrick, Charles, Humble, Bumble, Duck, Big Ears, Bo, G. Brute, Brandon Strickland. What's up from North Carolina? Randy Taylor, Jonathan Price, Sheep and Wolf's Clothing, Dave B. The Terrapin is here. The Terrapin is here. D5 Terps, James Foster, Larry, the GM, Richard Jones, Tracy FSU. What is Tracy thinking now? What is the Seminole fans thinking now? Josh Pate, something imminent. He said, and we're going to go through it eventually here. Josh Pate says the ACC is screwed. Powerful entities want out. Florida State being the school that Josh Pate names, and then he says others. Florida State and others. Tracy FSU, Minnesota Seminoles, Mr. Seminole JD. I expect a phone call from him later on the show. He's been saying, Greg, something is going to happen. Something is going to be announced. Again, we'll go through what Josh Pate said later in the show. First, we're going to hit the Illinois athletic director. We've got so much to get through. Expedition Greg is in the house. Mr. Buckeye Jared Jones, CFB Plus, the Big Lubbock, Eddie Williams, Sean Lee, Jim Reese is in the house. Mav Prof, MGC Sooner, Amy S is here. Tarvis Phillips, what's up, Greg? Go Tigers, go. Andrew King, Mike Smith, 01, Matt Cat, the Red Raider, Laura Weiss is in the house. Marcus Williams, Sean, the Architect. I've got time this morning. I appreciate it. Amazing Blues in here. Kyle Visser's in here. Morris Simmons. Hello, everyone. Goal knows. What is Mr. Morris Simmons thinking this noon, Saturday, June 22nd? Les Roggenkamp is in the house. Michael Monk is here. Movie Time Blues. Daniel Gorby. Mike Smith. Dale Simmons. Knowles. Immaculate is here. Kyle Steffens is here. David M is here. Everybody's in the house. Jim Reese. Christopher Mercado. He's here. Christopher Mercado is the gentleman who gave us the artwork on the Holy Smokes Theater. Once again, Mr. Christopher Mercado, I thank you. Team Hamburger is in the house. He's also not only a brilliant artist, but he's got a brilliant palate. Let's put it that way. A brilliant palate. But we don't have time to talk about food today. Jonathan Weaver is here. Andrew Krill is in the house. Miss Arkansas Razorback, Jamie Thornton is here. Nunn is here. Alan Althos, finally here for a live show. Watch them all, just usually later. Alan, I appreciate you coming on in. Vox Quindardo, sounds like the ACC is following the Big 12 model to survive. Interesting comment. If Josh Pate's more clues that he gave out on his podcast that we're going to be going through in the second half of this monologue, if they are valid, if they turn out to be true, Vox Quindaro, I think, has nailed at least most of it, although we don't know the details of it. If Josh Pate's clues are valid, if they turn out to be true, then it has to be that there has been secret negotiations going on between the ACC and at least Florida State, at least Clemson, and maybe others. It's not just, okay, Josh Pate said the ACC is screwed, but he did also label it a reconstructed, a reconfigured ACC. So Vox Quindaro, he's either on to something or he's on something, and I think Vox is on to something. Mercury 175 is in the house. Mike Smith is in the house. Clay Try is here. Mercury 175. How's the water temperature in Notre Dame land when it comes to potential movement? Mercury 175 just brought up if there's a reconfigured, a reconstructed ACC, and the ACC is screwed, and Florida State is getting out, and Clemson is getting out, well, hello to the Fighting Irish of Notre Dame. You're going to continue to maintain football independence on a reconfigured, reconstructed ACC? Is that NBC media package that you've got? I believe there's a little bit of a sliding scale based on the type of home games you have, according to sources told PATC. You're not going to be able to have that same scheduling agreement with the Florida State if Florida State's out, with the Clemson if Clemson's out, the North Carolina if they're out, possibly in Miami if they're out. RT is in the house. Mick Stevens, thank you so much once again. Mick Stevens is in the house. Tim W. is here. Front Runner is here. We got to get to our live show. Tough Tony is here. James, hi Greg. T. Miller is here. I'm a brilliant football mind. Nobody in particular. 7 + 1, 7 + 2, 7 + 3. Michael M. Heaven and earth may be ready to rock and part. Michael Bias is here. Illinois will get some good news on Sunday. G. Brew is here. Kerry Gold Nose is in the house. Congo, Steele Austin, Lorenzo Haynes, Mike Smith, Matt Neeson, go Cyclones. Matt Neeson is the only one that is happy with me in the Big 12 community after my Big 12 picks. Well, the Wildcats and Cyclones. They're the only ones that are happy with me. Benjamin Cask is in the house. Pac-2 news, not in this live show. But if you become a member, go to the description box below the video, hit the link, hit the join button, become a member in our members only episode, Early Peak Cloak and Dagger, episode 41. There is some Pac-2 and Friends information in that. Skaven yes is in the house. Let's get to it. Thank you for all coming on in on a Saturday lunchtime PATC. The first story. First story we got to get to. There's a link provided. IllinoisGuys.com. Matt Stevens, Illinois Guys staff writer. June 1st, yesterday, 2024, I want to give a shout out to Illini, Fighting Illini Ted, an important member of the PATC community who was able to give me this information. Thank you, Illini Ted. Champaign, Illinois. When Josh Whitman asked about a possible concern over the University of Illinois athletics being left out of a future consolidation into a Super League formula for college athletics, it was a one-word answer. Yes. The Illinois 8-year athletic director said Thursday morning, without a doubt. I think we talk about that extensively here in meetings. Before we go on, Alan Tran, please do not fill up the chat room. We're talking college football here. I've warned you about this before. Before we go on with this article, let's first talk about what this term Super League means, because people use it in different ways. Super League, when people use the term Super League, it usually ends up in three different buckets. Number one, Super League, in other words, there's going to be a Super League of 70 to 80 teams. Remember that? Where there's going to be divisions of 10 teams. And that Super League, I think, has basically no chance of ever happening. I've said that before. The second bucket where people use the term Super League, that is when the SEC and the Big Ten separate themselves from everybody else, expand their conference a little bit more, and then they have their own Super League, the Power 2 Super League. We believe at Peek Around the Corner that that's a possibility. We've always believed that. I've got tweets out for years talking about it, but we did not believe. We reported to you that we thought there was zero chance of that happening by 2026. There was too many other things going on. There was the House versus the NCAA settlement. It wasn't going to happen in 2026. That Big Ten SEC breakaway wasn't going to happen now. But it could happen years down the road. It could. I don't think it could. We're definitely not reporting that it's probable, but it very well could. So bucket number 2 is a possibility. Bucket number 3, when people talk about a Super League, is that the top half of the Big Ten and the top half of the SEC leaves everybody else behind, and they become a Super League of 20, 24 schools. This is the Super League. And this is what Josh Whitman is talking about. A Big Ten school being left behind. Being left behind by the top half of the Big Ten schools. This is the third bucket. And of course, there's a chance of that happening. The economics of more consolidation, right? It could happen. We got to leave all possibilities open. We don't know the economics. We don't know the future. We can give a peek around the corner, but man, you need a crystal ball 6 years out to know what it's going to look like. But Josh Whitman, who's been the athletic director for 8 years, is talking about, without a doubt, we talk about that extensively here in meetings. Near the end of his 2-hour annual roundtable discussion with local media, Whitman, who also serves as the chairman of the NCAA's Division I Council, addressed fears he and his athletic staff members have about Illinois being left out of a future structure of power conference programs that no longer wish to equally share benefits with fellow conference members. When detailing a possible Super League scenario similar to what was proposed in the European nations with professional soccer and almost immediately widely condemned by the public, Whitman described his current fear of Illinois finding itself in the same fate of Oregon State University and Washington State University when the future of the Pac-12 conference began to dissolve. Despite every other Pac-12 conference program finding a future home in the Power League, both Oregon State and Washington State were left without invitations to Power Leagues. On September 8, 2023, Oregon State and Washington State were forced to file a lawsuit against the Pac-12 and League Commissioner George Kliavkoff in Washington State Superior Court for control of the bare skeleton of assets of a conference that has been given until 2026 to figure out how to meet conference requirements according to NCAA bylaws by 2026. In layman's terms, Josh Whitman, 8-year athletic director of Illinois. In layman's terms, Whitman addressed what could mean for Illinois if some of the perceived big brand athletic institutions were to eventually become dissatisfied with the revenue sharing policy inside its own league. A major issue in Florida State's University current lawsuit, federal court against Atlantic Coast Conference, which would likely be prodded by television network executives wanting to broadcast exclusive big brand content. I always think about it in terms, now get this, the Illinois athletic director gives you a vivid picture. I always think about it in terms of the livegolfstat.com, the leaderboard, where when you get into the NCAA tournament for college golf, eventually they put that red line on there, Whitman said. I always think about it where at some point, if they choose to put that red line there, we have to make sure that Illinois is in front of the cut line. That has been a primary driver of our strategy here, really, since coming out of COVID-19. And will continue to be as we move in to the next environment, a larger Big Ten conference, where you have a salary cap of $22 million, revenue sharing to your student athletes. Josh Whitman is coming out in the big old open He's letting it know. He's letting it known that they've been having meetings about it. He's been strategizing about it. He's talking about a red cut line that might be introduced by the biggest brands in athletics. He's thinking about it, talking about it, having meetings about it, and he's being out in the open about it in an interview with the Illinois guy staff. And how can Illinois athletics find itself in front of the cut line should power conference consolidation eventually happen? For Whitman and his staff members at Illinois, the answer is simple. Find on the field in financial success in two sports, and two sports only: football and, to a lesser degree, men's basketball. We know all of those decisions are going to be eventually driven almost exclusively by football, and then very secondarily by men's basketball. We know this. Josh Whitman, we know all those decisions. If the biggest brand in college athletics create a super league, taking the top half of the Big Ten and the SEC, we know all those decisions are going to be eventually driven almost exclusively by football, and then very secondarily by men's basketball. We know this, Whitman said. As we've developed our strategy over the last several years, we have been very upfront internally and with others about the priority that those two sports occupy for our program. And it's not because we like them. It's not because they're inherently more important to us. It's a recognition of the reality of our business. If at some point, now Josh Whitman isn't guaranteeing that the red lines are coming. He's not saying definitely that the biggest brand athletic programs in the SEC and the Big Ten are going to break out. He says, if at some point that red line is put on the screen, those sports will determine where our athletic program falls relative to that red line. Are we on top of the red line? Are we below the red line? Thursday was the first time Whitman has publicly spoken about his current concerns about how Illinois could be directly impacted by the future of consolidation among the power conference programs in college athletics. Whitman spoke about these anxieties. Whitman spoke about these anxieties of future consolidation in a cold, stark reality. While the leader of an athletic department that has seen its football program fail to win a Big Ten conference title since 2001, failed to qualify for a bowl in consecutive seasons since 2011, and has only secured a prime national television draw for any of its past or current network partners just 10 times since 2012. Despite the fact, this is the PATC money shot of the article. Despite the fact the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign is a founding member of the Big Ten Conference going back to the league's inception in 1896, Whitman was quick to point out Thursday that may likely not matter in the ever-changing landscape of college athletics in 2024. The Illinois athletic boss, Josh Whitman, 8 years, said he no longer believes that no longer any program, including and most assuredly Illinois, can simply count on a historical preservation or grandfather for future power conference status survival. There's a very real consequence to being below that red line that has never existed before, Whitman said. If there's anything we've learned over the last 5 years, it's that we can't rely on being guaranteed anything anymore. Josh Whitman, interviewed by IllinoisGuy.com. There is a link in the description box. Holy smokes. Nothing happens in silos. The fear that Josh Whitman has about future consolidation, there is no way that you can convince me it's only limited to Josh Whitman. Now, he's not saying that it's definitely going to happen. He's not saying that the Big Ten is going to fracture, that the Big Ten biggest brands are going to go off and leave Illinois to produce the Super League. He's not saying it's definitely going to happen, but he's thinking about it. He's having meetings about it, and he believes, I'm going to show you this again. Hold on. There's a very real consequence to being below that red line that has never existed before. And I don't think Josh Whitman is just grabbing that out of thin air. I don't think this is, he says we've had internal discussions. It can't be just internal. That discussions has to be outside of Illinois as well. So, the reason why I am bringing this up, it's obvious. Josh Whitman, a major player, athletic director in the Big Ten Conference, is openly talking about it. So, of course, we had to bring it up. Of course, we had to talk about it. But number two, and I don't anticipate talking about this subject all that often here in the remaining months of 2024 and probably even into 2025. But when an athletic director openly talks about it, we are going to talk about it here at Peek Around the Corner. But there's another reason we're talking about it. There's another reason. We might be sitting on an implosion of the ACC. There may be news about it. It may be imminent. As Josh Pate, we're going to hit the Josh Pate news right now. Josh Pate gave out more news. So when you're thinking about this ACC implosion, when you're thinking about, as Josh Pate said, the ACC is screwed, that there are powerful entities that want Florida State out. When you think about the ACC going to be reconstructed, reconfigured, in that the news of that, Josh Pate said he would not be stunned if that news breaking is imminent. We got more on that coming up. In that backdrop, how incentivized, what motivation is there for the Illinois athletic director, the Purdue athletic director, the Rutgers athletic director, the Maryland athletic director, the Minnesota athletic director, Nebraska's athletic director, Indiana's athletic director, UCLA's athletic director? What incentive is it for those athletic directors, those presidents, those fan base, those money perch? What motivation now do they have? If that fear is not contained just at Illinois, if it has spread, what motivation do they have to expand the Big Ten Conference with the North Carolina, with the Virginia, with the Clemson, with the Florida State, with the Miami? What motivation, if there is fear that the Big Ten could fracture, that the SEC could fracture, what motivation does Mississippi State have? What motivation does Mississippi have? What motivation does Vanderbilt have? What motivation does Arkansas, Kentucky have? What motivation do some of these SEC and Big Ten schools have if there's going to be Super League being built? If there is fear, what motivation do they have in expanding their conference? Just a question. Let me get caught up with the super chats. Then we're going to go into the Josh Pate news. And then we're going to open up for phone calls. And we're going to be live for as long as it takes. So be patient. Your call is going to get through eventually. Alan, thank you so much for becoming an early peak member. Thank you for your generosity. I do appreciate it. You are here by Knighted Cloak and Dagger. Carrie Gold Nose, thank you so much for your gift membership. And for the person who got the gift membership, please say thank you to Carrie for giving you that gift membership. Carrie and the person who received it, you are here by Knighted Cloak and Dagger. Congratulations. Benjamin Cass, thank you for becoming an early peak member to our show. You can go and check out our Cloak and Dagger early peak members only episodes where we drop a little bit of Cloak and Dagger info. Go check out episode 41. Thank you so much, Benjamin, for becoming a member, for your generosity, for helping us keep the lights on. You are hereby granted Knighted Cloak and Dagger. Thank you so much, Benjamin. Thank you, Carrie Gold Knowles, for your generosity once again. And Alan, Ryan Thomas, read the room. Read the room. They want congressional action now. Thank you, Ryan, for your super chat. I do appreciate it. Now, we got to get to Josh Pate. Obviously, I cannot show or put the audio on for Josh Pate's podcast. We did provide a link in the description box, so you can listen to it. I'm going to give you the bullet points. What Josh Pate said about his gift on X in regards to the water shaken, and he talked about ACC. This is what Josh Pate said. Again, these are the bullet points. He was asked a question. I think he was doing some type of mailbag. The question was, can you expand on what you meant by that GIF on X that you posted with the water shaking in the glass? Josh Pate said the following. The ACC is screwed. Powerful entities want Florida State out, and powerful entities want others out in the ACC. He did not name anybody else, but he did say Florida State. Josh Pate said he received some information from legal people, lawyers, legal people, people who really don't even probably know the mascot of Florida State and these other schools. legal people. They've been pretty conservative with their information. They basically been telling Josh for these so much time, saying really can't talk about it, really can't say anything. But they finally told Josh Pate early this week. That's why he put out the gift. They said it's coming. Here, it's coming. They were giving Josh Pate a heads up that something is a coming in the ACC. This is the legal side. Normally, these legal people have been very guarded, but not now. They say it's a coming. Josh Pate went on to say the ACC will be reconfigured, and the action of it won't happen during this year, this football season. He says the action of it won't happen. But he says the news of this reconfigured, reconstructed ACC will be breaking. He will not be stunned by it within the next 9 Saturdays. So, imminent. He also, Josh Pate, now all that is very interesting. All that is very interesting. But he said something that really connected with me. Because this is this is the terminology, the language that I use, because it's happened to me. Josh Pate says, and I don't know the exact words. You're going to have to listen to. It starts when you go to the link provided in the description below the video, and when you hit the link, go to about the 28-minute, 15-second part of the podcast. About 28-minute, 15. Go about 28-minute. Okay. But Josh Pate says that there are reporters, basically, I'm not going to use the exact words, I apologize, but Josh Pate says that reporters have this story in the oven. He knows there are reporters that are on this story, that have this story in the oven. As I have reported to you, oftentimes reporters have information, but it's embargoed. They're not able to release it. That's part of getting the information in the first place. That's part of protecting your sources. That's all part of it. But and there are times when I know there's something that is in the oven. It's embargoed. It's kept, but they're sitting on something. Josh Pate says he knows that there are reporters sitting on it. So what does it all mean? What does it all mean? Does it mean that Josh Pate, that there's information out there, that settlement talks have been going on, that it was leaked, that things that they've been talking, the ACC has been talking to Florida State, been talking to Clemson. The ACC has been talking to their other members of their conference to see what they can agree on. ESPN has been in these discussions. If settlement talks have been happening, hasn't been leaked, there's always been a possibility of that. If there has been settlement talks going on, if that is a yes, then that could give Clemson and Florida State and others the possibility to have meaningful conversation with others. But I haven't heard a word. I haven't heard a word about a leak. I haven't heard a word about a settlement, and I was not expecting to. I have not heard a word about meaningful talks, because obviously that means a settlement is in the works. But for Josh Pate to say the following, in a reconstructed, reconfigured ACC, so the ACC is not going away. Part of the story that Josh Pate believes that he's being told, part of the story is not the ACC completely going away. ACC, reconstructed, reconfigured. He uses both terms. But powerful entities want Florida State out. So I don't believe that Josh Pate is talking about the dissolution theory, where Florida State, Clemson, and 6 other biggest brands in the ACC do the dissolution theory, where they reconstruct their own. I don't believe Josh Pate means that. I don't think so. When he says Florida State is getting out, wants out, powerful entities want out, I don't think he's saying Florida State wants out to join an 8-team a conference with 7 other current members of the ACC. I don't think Josh Pate means that. Now, what is interesting to me, and maybe only to me, is that I've heard that Big Ten and the SEC would like to slow this down. So again, this possibly could run opposite of what Josh Pate is giving us clues on. I don't know. I have scrambled this morning. I do not know what Josh Pate has. I do not know what the legal person, this legal side of things is told Josh Pate. Josh Pate did say, and this is often the case, he was told things he cannot say, but he said things what he could say. The news of this breaking of a reconfigured ACC, even though the official action will not take place this year, the news of it breaking is imminent within the next 9 Saturdays before the season starts. And Josh Pate said there are National College Football reporters who have the story in the oven. I believe that Josh Pate believes it. I believe Josh Pate has the information. Whether that information turns out to be correct, I do not know. But I believe Josh Pate is being 100% serious. I believe Josh Whitman is being 100% serious. So again, I'm going to open up the phone lines after we get caught up with the super chats. Let it rip. I don't care. Whatever you believe, you let it rip on your phone call or let it rip on your super chat. What do you think is going on here? What do you think Josh Pate means? Breaking news within the next 9 Saturdays. And the story is in the oven, and he used the word reporters as in plural. He believes has the story. Ryan Thomas, the greatest fear in Minnesota is being included in the Big Ten, Wisconsin Dairy Association, Cheddar division of the conference. Ryan Thomas, thank you so much for the super chat. I do appreciate it. I cannot envision a world in which Minnesota and Wisconsin are not in the same conference. But if there is a super conference they're going to form in the next 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years, of course, Wisconsin is going to be way ahead of Minnesota in the pecking order. Now, this has happened to other schools across the country. And when I had the story, when we had the story about USC, when we had the story about the Pac-12 going to be broken up, when we said the Big 12 was going to poach the Pac-12, I went where the story, we go where the story goes. So if 4, 5, 6, 7 years from now, if the story is the Big Ten is fracturing, the conference that Minnesota built started in 1896 and it leaves Minnesota behind, I'm going to be reporting it. I'm going to be giving you the peek around the corner. Just what we do here at Peek Around the Corner. Kerry Gold knows I'm going to be 100% honest. The ACC wasn't even a decent football conference before Florida State joined. It was really bad. Includes Clemson. I do respectfully Clemson now. I respect Clemson now, though. Thank you for the super chat, Kerry Gold knows. Florida State joined the horrible ACC in 1992. Since 1992, Florida State has won 17 ACC championships. As of right now, that's still not championships. Then Clemson was a founding member. Ryan Willie, in my opinion, if the Big Ten goes past 20, they'll go to 24. My question is, before we open up the phone calls, if the Big Ten's going to keep expanding, does Illinois, does Purdue, does Minnesota, does Rutgers, does Maryland, does Indiana, do those schools get any security? Can there even be security given? That's probably not even a thing anymore. Minnesota has been for every Big Ten expansion since 1896. It's the only school that has been for every expansion. That includes Ohio State in 1919. That includes Michigan State. That includes all of them. Minnesota was for Nebraska. Minnesota was for Penn State. Minnesota was for Oregon. Minnesota for Washington. Minnesota with USC. Minnesota was for UCLA. Is all that going to come back and bite the Gophers in the behind? If it does, we'll be covering the story here at Peek Around the Corner. 4, 5, 6 years from now, 7, 8, 9 years from now. If Josh Whitman has the fear, then Minnesota has the fear. There's other schools have the fear. What is the incentive for those schools to say, yeah, we'll go to 20, we'll go to 24? The motivation for Minnesota to be for all this expansion was to increase the value of the conference. That has been the goal. That was the creation of the Big Ten Network, which the Minnesota Golden Gophers pushed. Minnesota has been on the right side of history throughout all this. But what good is it to increase the value of the conference, to become the richest conference in the country, if you're going to get left behind 4, 5, 6, 7 years from now? If it happens. We're not reporting. We're just reporting Josh Whitman's fear. And he said it out in the open. He said it in an interview. So, of course, we're going to cover it. Kerry Gold knows, for your information, send super chats from my phone. I can see the grammatical error. Don't worry about it. I don't care about grammatical errors or glasses. Thank you for your generosity, Kerry Gold knows. We're fine. We're good with it. We are absolutely good with it. Okay. Thank you for the super chats. I do appreciate it. When you send one in, I will get to it as quick as possible. For now, we got to open up the phone lines. And we are going to be here as long as it takes. I don't know what type of phone calls we're going to get. I don't know what's happening, guys. Josh Pate. It's imminent. It's imminent. Breaking news is imminent within the next 9 Saturdays.
Call from
Immaculate.
Mr. Hot Guy is on the line. The floor is yours.
Well, I couldn't wait this time, Greg.
Yeah. I don't blame you, sir. I don't blame you.
And I usually try to be as concise as possible because
Yeah.
I know how many people want to talk. So if I go a little long, just be like, hey, you got to go.
No, go ahead. I'm going to have this live show on as long as it takes. I cannot see how I can constrict phone calls. So if you are frustrated, just keep calling. We're going to get you in. I'm not going anywhere. Go ahead, Immaculate.
First thing I'm going to say, oh, man, there's a lot trying to figure out where to go. It's like a circular.
Yeah.
Fear is a great motivator.
Yeah.
And when you are members of a conference that has been around for over a century, which is, and does huge business, and sometimes you might look at your athletics like it's kind of a sideshow, you get very complacent at some of these schools. I think that could be agreed upon. Like certain schools, including Illinois, Indiana, some of them have just become very complacent at cashing the checks, not putting it in, not doing things. Like I would compare Illinois to Minnesota. Minnesota and Illinois have been similar in some ways, but complete, absolute opposites in other ways. When you look at Minnesota and what they're doing with, uniforms and different things to try to get people excited about it and to get attention, Illinois doesn't really do any of that. And that's nothing against any Illinois fans in chat, but it's the two different kinds of mentalities of schools in the Big Ten that are at that, people would say the lower half of the athletic spectrum. And that's what the school like Illinois, so if they're afraid, the AD is afraid, that's a good thing. Because that means they're going to start to move and act and do things. In this interview, it sounds like it's with a media person solely focused on the Illini, right? So the intention of that going out, because he's talking to him like he's a damn therapist, is to get this across to Illini fans, donors, boosters, people. This isn't like a broad thrown out in national media. This is a very focused thing. And like you're saying, he's been around a long time. So, okay, so this guy knows what he's doing. I'm not going to attack some suggestions, but once I saw that he'd been on that council for a while, it's like, okay, this guy knows. So it looks to me like he's saying we need to pick things up. We need to start to move. And I look at it as the same way as what's going on in Nebraska. Not that there isn't a chance that something bad couldn't happen, because of course there is, especially if you know things could be bad and you can't get things moving. Yeah, maybe. If Nebraska can't get the medical campus merged into the main campus, maybe. If Illinois can't get people actually excited and spending money and donating and getting them on par, maybe. But we also have to remember, like with the conference like the Big Ten, there is so much interconnected business between these schools, and we now know, like, it's not really, debate. It's pretty much fact that, like, the athletic department more and more is becoming the front porch of these schools in a time when we're going to have decreasing demographics.
Yeah.
For them to get thrown out of the football world of the Big Ten means they're seriously going to be hurt by that. They just are. Like, if you're someone who's looking at multiple different schools of where I'm going to go, this one's saying, well, we no longer have the football experience for you to experience on a Saturday. That's a big part of going to these major universities. I know a lot of students don't go for that, but even if you're not going to the games, it's still all over on campus. Like whatever is going on with that, you're hearing it, you're feeling it. Hell, you might even be in classes with some of the players. It's a big deal, and for that to also not be there, it's going to hinder them as a school, which is then going to be felt like a shockwave throughout the whole Big Ten because they have such interconnected. We're talking internships, programs, connected research programs, shared class programs across there. If one of those schools is becoming weakened and lowered in that regards because of, say, decreasing enrollment, the other schools are going to feel it. So it would have to be pretty bad, I think, for a school like Ohio State to leave behind in Illinois.
I would think so. Yep.
Yeah. So I'm not saying that people shouldn't look at this and be like, okay, this is real, because it is. But you got to understand, like, this athletic director, his job now is to motivate. Mm-hmm. And you can sit there, and we know this because how many times you talk about things to you're red in the face and people just kind of maybe don't respond to it. But if you throw in a little fear, they respond a lot because we are an extremely fear-motivated people. We respond to fear. So that's what I hear, and I think that's a great thing. Like, I'm not, like, pulling on. I think he's doing his job. I want to see that from Indiana, which now they've got a new coach and they're spending money on that. We're seeing it there. Mm-hmm. Those are places that have not done this, whereas, like, a place like Minnesota has been trying like crazy.
Well, look, Minnesota, the year from 2019 to 2023, if you take away the COVID year, that's been the best years of Gopher football since 1962 to 64. So Minnesota's been winning football games. I mean, they won 22 more football games than Nebraska since 2014. Minnesota was a top 10 team, ranked number 10 in the country in 2019. That was just 5 years ago. The thing about Minnesota is, and we got a beautiful stadium, we got a beautiful athletic village, all of it's new. Northwestern is building an $800 million football stadium. Yeah. What, are they going to get kicked out in 5-6 years? I don't think it's going to happen. But you know, I had to cover this Josh Woodman story,
of course.
But and the thing is, and I was talking late, like 1:00 in the morning, to a Ohio State beat writer. And we're going back and forth. It was 1:00 in the morning. And like we agreed. It's like Minnesota, they're going to do the $22 million thing. They're going to put money into the football. But you know what? I mean, man, going up against the Buckeyes and Michigan and Penn State, and USC, and I mean, yeah, you know what I'm saying? It's like, okay, we'll put more money into it, but are we going to get more wins? I mean, and I said this. I said, you take every other hockey program in the country, and I'm talking like the last 30 years of hockey. 100. You're not going to be able to compete with Minnesota year in, year out. You're just not going to be able to do it, no matter how much money you put into it, because Minnesota has all the recruiting ground. Minnesota Duluth, Minnesota State, now St. Thomas is going to be a powerhouse in hockey. That's the little Notre Dame in Minnesota, because there's all these hockey players. We don't have the football players. So it's like, I completely understand why people would say Minnesota is at the bottom half of the Big Ten, even though we've won enough games not to be at the bottom half. But when it comes to football brand, we are at the bottom half. And I don't know how much more we can. I don't know if there's any more that we can do. In Indiana, now they're going to be spending the money.
Mm-hmm.
And Illinois might be now spending the money. We know Northwestern spending a whole bunch of money. So the bottom feeders, if you want to call them that, are all competing against each other. There's only so many wins to go around. There's only so many bowl opportunities to go around. And again, to beat Michigan State, Ohio. So I don't know how much more can be done. If we get left behind, I don't know. That's my emotional feelings about it. It's like, how much more could we possibly do? I don't know if there is anything more we could possibly do.
My thoughts on that, on the reality of it, is I don't think anyone in the conference has any expectations of Minnesota or Illinois or whomever to completely upend the hierarchy. The hierarchy is the hierarchy, and that's probably not going to change for a while. They're getting more piled on top of them, and that's the value coming in. Their job isn't to upend the hierarchy. Their job is to win the other games, to maybe have some, whereas like you might have your top teams have some cupcakes in those OOC matchups. What you need from a Minnesota and from an Illinois is to schedule some good games in OOC and to win those games, because that boosts the power ranking of the conference as a whole. So that's what they need from those schools. They don't need them to come in and maybe every once in a while, right? You get a big win, get people excited, like, holy cow, but not normally, not regularly. You just need them to get strong enough so that they're confident to schedule some strong OSC matchups.
And again, I'll just take it from Minnesota's side. Then we'll go on to Josh Pate. Minnesota has, like, since PJ Fleck's been there, they got like the 6th or 5th best record out of conference record in the nation. They've won 5 bowl games in a row. 4 of those have been against other power conferences. I just don't know. One of them was January 1st game against Auburn. They've beaten Georgia Tech. They've beaten West Virginia. They keep winning. But unless Minnesota can shoot up into the playoffs and win like a playoff game, I don't know if it helps their brand. You know what I'm saying? And I don't know. Yeah. That's be a hard... Jeff Beaver, the demographics of Minnesota and Illinois are not favorable. Minnesota demographic, we're not losing population. Minnesota's a completely different situation than Illinois and other states. Minnesota has not lost any congressional seats over the last 40, 50 years. So we're pretty good on demographics. We're still the 17th biggest media market in the country. That's not the problem. The problem is brand. Minnesota's football brand, I don't know how it can increase. But anyways, what do you think about Josh Pate's comments? And then we'll get to the phone calls, Immaculate.
I understand why some people think that he pushes a narrative. I mean, it's been talked about him that he pushes an SEC narrative and all. But I just think Josh Pate's a football guy. And, when you look over time here, the SEC has been the top football conference. That's not to say that sometimes they don't get overhyped. They do. Sometimes the scheduling gets done, the rankings get done, and it helps them out. It does. But there's also reason for that. So I think people tend to look at him and say, oh, he's just an SEC hawk. But I don't think that that's the only thing that he does. And he very remarkably goes around the country. Like for football season, he's all over the place. I don't know who goes around as much as he does, except for people who are, the broadcasters and have to go around and actually broadcast the games across the country. He gets around. So he's going to be the type of guy that's going to have some interesting connections. And what I saw him say here in his explanation, I got to tell you, JP sounded a lot like JD. If you listen to JD and his call-ins and what he's been saying lately and what he's hearing coming out of the Florida State folks, I thought it sounded very similar. So, and I've had a lot of talks with JD, and I consider him to be a very genuine person. So, if I was to think that JP Pate is full of it, then I'd be thinking JD is full of it. And I don't. So, for me, that's my comparison. Is like, it sounds like a similar thing. It's just coming from a different angle. So maybe that's real. And one thing I've, in my talks to some folks is I say, if we're getting close, not to say that we're close, but if we are getting close, you need to start expecting to see, and these are loaded words, but I don't know how a better term to use, disinformation and misinformation. You're going to see some stuff that comes out that, maybe it's not correct, but the person thought it was. That would be misinformation. But you're also going to have some stuff that's put out in public that's intended to either manipulate or get a certain party or parties to move, and that would be some disinformation. And I'm kind of at a phase right now where that's where I'm starting to watch for, because I do think that it feels like we're getting close to having something. We still have the settlement that needs to be approved by the judge. We still have these NLRB issues. We've got the NCAA now coming in and filing a brief in support of Dartmouth. Why? So to me, I don't necessarily think that they really think that's going to help. It's just an amicus brief, but it kind of shows where some focus is. And when you say that he's saying that there are some powerful entities that want, a Florida State and a Clemson and some others out of the ACC, I think most people might naturally think, okay, Big Ten, SEC, ESPN, maybe Fox, maybe like these type of things. But maybe there's some others out there too. And I don't want to go too far down the hole of one particular ending, because that's just one possibility of many. But if they do want to turn the ACC into something very different, which is what he's saying, reconfigure it, going from being a conference that's trying to run in the same model as two other conferences that are beating it, talking about the Big Ten and the SEC, to a different model, that might require some schools to be gone. That's why I say, like, if they want to build a conference which is focused on the needs and the capabilities of private universities, a school like Florida State throws that off big time, because they're just going to plow over you, especially in this kind of new age we're going into of money. So unless you're like a Stanford or something, but so I don't know, but I tend to take him at his word, because this isn't what he does. Yeah. He's not trying to reach out or sell out to the realignment crowd. I mean, that's way smaller than what he already does. It feels like he's having people that he has met in these talks, and they're saying things to him, and maybe in a way in which they're saying, hey, you should let people know about this. Yeah. He doesn't seem to make a big deal about it. It's like this little blurps in the middle of what he talks about. You know what I mean?
Yeah. All righty, Mac. I'm going to let some people else on here. I appreciate your phone call.
Absolutely.
You got it, man.
Beautiful. Looking forward to what you have to say. You have a good day.
You got it. Beautiful. Phone lines are open, 763.
Call from
BJ.
BJ, can you hold on for one moment, please?
Yes, sir.
One moment. Kerry Gold knows. I'm glad everyone else is feeling the heat. Thank you for the super chat. Kerry Gold knows. Appreciate it. Illy Buck gifted a membership. Thank you so much for your generosity. You are hereby knighted, cloak and dagger, once again. And I'm going to see if I know who got the gift membership. I'm probably too late. Anyways, I think I am too late. Thank you so much for your generosity, Illabuck. Appreciate it. BJ, let it rip. The floor is yours. What are you thinking?
As always, Greg, thanks for allowing me to speak.
You got it.
A few things, and I'll try to make these fairly quick. The Big Ten realignment or Big Ten consolidation, fear. My take is very similar to Immaculate's, but I think the motivations are a little different. I think if you look over this past summer, Indiana, Northwestern, Nebraska, some of the historically lower tier teams have been pushing this narrative of we have to get better, right? Similar to what FSU was complaining about when it comes to the bottom half of the ACC. You guys get all this money, right? You don't reinvest it in the football. And I think with the new teams coming into the Big Ten, the bottom half can no longer just be, complacent and content with being the 10, 12, 13 best team in the Big Ten. But I do think the motivation behind it is ultimately the Illinois, the Northwesterns of the world, the Indianas of the world, they're going to spend more money in football not to beat Ohio State, USC, Oregon. I think they're spending the money to beat the top halves of the middle two conferences.
Yeah.
I think if they can spend money and consistently be better than the top half of the middle two conferences, it lays the groundwork for increased revenue splits, for CFP revenue splits. And if we were to cross that bridge of complete separation from Power 2, that would be like the final straw in terms of a data point to kind of move it, right? Because now we have the bottom halves of these Power 2 leagues with fans invested in athletic departments invested in the football. So that's my perspective. Mm-hmm. This is just my speculation, but I think that's the motivation behind the bottom halves of these Power 2 conferences wanting to be better in football.
And so what do you think about the Josh Pate comments?
So, Josh Pate. I think Josh Pate filled the need. Josh Pate, for those who live in the South, like SEC football, but has a disdain for Feinbaum because he's a certain way. Josh Pate filled the need. He's younger. He's from that part of the country, and he speaks their language, right? He is normally not a gaslighter. He's very informed. He does push a narrative, like everyone does, but he pushes a hard narrative. And when I hear things come out of his mouth, honestly, I say he has several SEC insiders, meaning ADs and powerful people, who are feeding him information.
Yeah, but this particular information was from the legal side. He made that pretty clear. Those who probably don't even know these football teams' mascot, this is a legal leak of information to him.
And so what I thought to myself is he had some SEC insider on there. Most conferences have this like a legal board, lawyers and stuff that.
Yep.
Somebody from that realm gave him information, and when he says something, I'm not saying he's always right, but his hit rate is high. So I believe there's truth to it. And if you don't, I don't know if you remember this a couple weeks ago, Greg, but I talked about how I think the ACC is going to shift into a different formation, right? I just don't think that they can continue as they currently are. And this kind of coincided with what I kind of believed earlier. And I don't have any inside information, but I have a brain and I use it, and I can kind of see the tea leaves. For lack of a better term, I peeked around the corner. And consolidating with private schools, maybe having some kind of tiered payout, I think that's a way to keep your top ACC teams that don't leave. You can keep them away from the Big 12 because the Big 12 is not going to go shopping for Boston College or Wake Forest. Mm-hmm. Right? So ultimately, I think there's a mentality shift with the ACC. The ACC historically has tried to protect the bottom half of their league and be more inclusive. I think there's been a shift as we have to protect the top half of the league, because there's a real threat that they may leave to the Big 12, Miami, Louisville, Pitt, Virginia Tech, the new top half once the 4 teams leave. So I think there's been a shift, and I think with that shift, the shift is we have to protect those teams from the Big 12 to be viable at all, right? So that's my opinion when it comes to Josh Pate.
Yeah.
He's not a bad. I actually like. He's entertaining. You know, he's thoughtful. He just doesn't say things, right? And then he does a very good job of supporting his opinion with perspective. And you can never be upset with somebody who can do, who does that in terms of their show. Got
it. All right, sir.
But appreciate it.
Beautiful, BJ. Thanks for calling. Great call. I will say this. I listened to this part of Josh Pate's comments on his podcast. He gave us more information. If you've just joined us, Josh Pate has given more information on his gift that he put out on his X account on Tuesday. It isn't, so to me there's 4 parts to Josh Pate's comments. 1, ACC is screwed. Florida State's getting out. So are others. There's powerful entities with a lot of money. Florida State and others are getting out. That's number 1. Josh Pate said that. He also said that, number 2, the ACC is going to be reconstructed, reconfigured. And I think that is very interesting words. It's not like he could have said the ACC is going to get smaller. The ACC is going to backfill. And maybe that's what he meant by it. But he used different words. Reconstructed, reconfigured. Kind of interesting. And a third part of this, what I'm getting out of, there's like 4 major parts of it. The third part of it is he got this information from a legal side of this story. So he did not get it from Paul Feinbaum, an athletic director, somewhere in the SCC, the ACC. He got it from a legal guy who is legally guarded, who's been telling him, can't go there, can't say that, can't go there, can't say it, I can't tell you, I don't know. And then suddenly out of nowhere, early last week, he said, it's coming. It's coming. And then another 4th part, major part, I believe, of this Josh Pate story, he gave out more information on his podcast, is the fact that Josh Pate says reporters have the story in the oven. He has reasons to believe reporters have it in the oven, and when they can go with it, when this happens, they're going to go with it. Josh Pate is saying he does not expect any action, official action, to happen during this year, during this football season. But he did say he believes there's going to be breaking news, multiple breaking news, stories coming out imminent, happening within the next 9 Saturdays before the season starts, that we're going to be getting news on this reconstructed, reconfigured ACC. That's now none of us really knows what that means, but that is some information. And of course, I find it very interesting because I've been told recently here, May 23rd, May 28th, we reported to you that if the Big Ten if they could control it, which they don't, if the SEC could control it, which they don't, but if they could, they would like to hit the pause button. They would like to see what happens this year. That there is a certain, I don't know, and maybe Josh Whitman in his comments, the athletic director of Illinois, has something to do with slow down, you move too fast. You gotta make the story last. So who knows? Within the next 9 Saturdays, it's hard to believe though. But that's what Josh Pate said in his podcast. Again, phone lines are open. 763-260-1333. We are going to remain as long as it takes to get through the phone calls that we expect to come on in. So give us a call. Lines are open now. They may not be open for the next hour. So give us a call. ACC is still a very good basketball conference. Morris Simmons says the ACC may not qualify for a college football playoff if the top teams get out.
Call from
Brett Taylor.
Brett Taylor is on the line. The floor is yours. Thanks for calling.
Hey, just want to make a real quick comment.
Yep.
I take Josh Pate, and I'm just speculating now. I know absolutely nothing, but this is my story from day one. ESPN and Fox have the money. They're driving the train. If what he's saying is accurate, I take it to mean ESPN and Fox have come to an agreement as to how they're going to divide up the teams that are not currently in the Big Ten and the SEC and who's going where. And then at some point, it will become a public announcement. But I don't think it's the FSU lawsuit or the Clemson lawsuit as much as it is ESPN and Fox are the ones doing the heavy negotiating.
And if that's the case, it is my opinion that the circle would have to be a little bit bigger. Because
I think so too.
I mean the other ACC schools, right, that are not going to be going to the SEC or the Big Ten, they got to be involved in this as well. They got to be involved in this decision making, because legally, right now, unless there's a victory in the courts that we don't know of and we don't think there is, if there's a settlement, Wake Forest, Boston College, Syracuse, they have to be a part of this settlement. Just like, on a much bigger scale, but just like, the Big 12 schools had to be involved in this settlement for Oklahoma and Texas to leave just a little bit earlier. This would be more dramatic, of course. So you could be onto something, Brett.
Well, my logic real quickly is, just from a fan's perspective, the logical thing is for a super conference, the Super League, to have 56 teams. You got 8 divisions with 7 teams in each division. You play 6 home games, and then you play the other 56 to finish up your schedule. And that would be the number when you say expanding. And for the ACC, some of them go to the Big 12, and some of them will figure out how they can do the best they can with Conference USA and AAC and et cetera, and be left out.
Got it. All right, Brett. I appreciate the phone call. You might be onto it. I don't know. But I think
That's my story,
yep,
and I'm sticking to it.
you got it. That might be the story. Thank you, Brett. Appreciate the phone call. Call again, sir. Again, Rutgers is investing heavily. Indiana is using all this. All these Big Ten schools are going to go spend $22 million. There is only so many wins. There is as many losses as there is wins in conference play. And then you talk about these Big Ten schools. They got to do better out of conference, better bowl games. I think Northwestern, Wisconsin, Minnesota, they have some record like they're 20-4 in the last 24 bowl games. I don't know how much more some of these Big Ten schools. I know nationwide people say, well, that Big Ten school's got to do better. I don't know how much better they can do. They're spending a whole lot of money. Again, it ain't easy to beat Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State. It's just most of the country would lose to them constantly as well.
Call from
Larry, the GM.
Larry, the GM is on the line. The floor is yours. What do you think, sir?
So, Greg, this is really interesting. I want to play connect the dots with you.
Got it. Let's do it.
So, we've heard that the Big 12 is amassing a war chest of financials.
Yes, sir.
And we agreed that the wisest thing for them to do with that war chest would be to pay, to help schools leave the ACC.
Well, when you say we agree, you and I may agree, but a lot of people in our community, PATC community, think we're foolish. But yes, you and I probably
agree. We agree. You and me agree on that.
Okay.
That's the wisest thing for them to do, because that will help their long-term Big 12 viability.
So that's dot number one.
That's dot number one. Let's say dot number two is Josh Pate saying the ACC is about to lose, and I think contextually multiple members, and I think he's saying it beyond Florida State and Clemson. Do you agree with that?
I would agree. The way he said it, he said Florida State and others. He did not say Florida State plus Clemson or Florida State plus one. I would agree with that.
Cool.
Dot two.
Okay, that's exactly the way I'm reading it too.
Yeah.
So now this gets shaky when we actually start putting schools with what I'm about to say. Okay, but let's just go with the big picture. Let's say there's 4 schools that are leaving the ACC and they're going to the Big Ten and they're going to the SEC. Whichever who goes where. I'm not worried about that right now.
Yeah.
Then let's say the Big 12 uses that roughly $1 billion to bring in 6 schools from the ACC.
6.
Yeah.
Not 4. 6.
6. And that way it can happen, Greg, at whatever. In fact, one of those or 2 of those schools could be the California schools. It could be Stanford and Cal. Okay, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying conceptually.
Yeah.
If you get 10 schools to agree to leave the ACC, you have the dissociation. Even after you know what I'm saying is that even after they expand. In fact, I would say the Big 12 would love Stanford. Now, Stanford may be one of those 4 in the Big 10. Whatever way.
Yeah.
And ultimately, 10 schools are leaving the ACC because the Big 12 is using the $1 billion to get other schools to come to them.
Okay, before you go to your other dots, let's pretend all that's true. You still, even with that, you're still going to need those remaining 6 to 7 ACC schools You're gonna still need to have to satisfy them, or they're gonna go to the courts. They're gonna appeal. They're gonna go to the courts, man. They're going to appeal. Jim Phillips is gonna have to be satisfied, as he's the curator. He's trying to protect the interests of those schools left behind. They're going to have to be satisfied. So I guess that's part of the reconfigured ACC. Is that what you're
Correct.
thinking?
Greg,
Okay.
in the words of Don Draper, that's what the money's for.
Got it. Don Draper, .3.
It's a lesson we learned. That's what the money's for.
Got
to
it.
make the 6 to 7. I don't even know, Greg. I guess it's 7, right?
Yeah, I don't know.
It depends.
I'm not good with math. Yeah.
It depends how many are actually in this scenario that I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
But ultimately, there are the left behinds that could work with Oregon State, Washington State, whoever is left at that point, to form something that the money helps them survive and probably become the most viable G5 level conference, G5 plus level conference. But that's what the money's for.
Here is, all that sounds great. And all that fits into it fits into what Josh Pate would say. It fits into the Big 12, looking at private equity. It fits into a lot of, the one part where it doesn't fit with a guy like me is,
I'm sorry for my dog, Greg. Sorry.
no problem. I love dogs. Dogs. Don't even get me started. Dogs can bark on this channel as much as they want. Dogs are the most beautiful thing that God created. But the one part of that is, if that is what Josh Pate is, if this is what's going on, that is a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of actors in this. There is a lot of consent. There's a lot of negotiations. There's a lot of footwork. There's a lot of paperwork. There's a lot of. And if all that is going on, if we've got it about settled, if this is it, if this is the great coordination, dang it, I don't have any of it. I don't have it. And that bothers me. And
But Greg, you've got the dots, though.
Well, I got the dots, but I don't have the story. I don't know of any of the secret, that's just a personal thing. But if this is a big coordinated piece, and there's a couple of national reporters sitting on it, wow, what a story. And I bet if this is what's happening, I bet they're chomping at the bit to let it rip.
Greg, if you're the commissioner of the ACC, right, and you don't you at some point have to say, what's the backup plan? Like, wouldn't this scenario be the best backup plan? You make Florida State, Clemson, Miami, North Carolina pay to get out. You're getting nearly probably $1 billion for that. Mm-hmm. You're getting $1 billion from the Big 12. I think, based on what Wild you just said, that would make the rest of them whole. They would lose a ton in their TV deal, but you get that much money in. I think they're surviving. Now that conference is left. The leftovers is not a Power 4 conference, right? But if you're the ACC and all this is going to happen anyway, isn't it the commissioner's job to? We've talked before about motives, right? What is the motive of Miami? What's the motive of North Carolina when there's a settlement, right? So, isn't it the ACC commissioner's job to prepare for a future where they don't have those Big Four, and potentially because they don't have those Big Four, the Big 12 comes calling? And wouldn't it make sense for them to actually say, okay, what about let's I mean, we know that he's talking to Florida State. They know they're talking to Clemson. What if this is all the dominoes being put together? I mean, Greg, I agree with you. There's no like agreement with the Big Ten or the SEC that those schools are going there. But I think there's probably a really uneasy feeling from the ACC standpoint, and a good feeling in those schools that they know they're going somewhere. And so I think this is like the canary in the mine shaft, right? I'm telling you, I think this is where they're going. And I wrote about this like a year ago. Mm-hmm. And so this is way clearer now than when I wrote that article a year ago. But this is what I'm thinking could happen.
Got it.
Based on the dots we're seeing now.
Yeah. All right, man. I do appreciate it. I'm sure we got more phone calls coming in.
Yeah.
Great
call. Thanks, Greg. I don't want to take all your time. Thank you.
Yep. Call again, sir. Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
A lot of great comments in the chat room. A lot of great comments in the chat room.
Call from
Numbskull News.
Numbskull News is on the line. I am incredibly interested in what you've got to say, sir. Josh Pate, what do you think?
Well, I've made a previous video about, when everyone was speculating, and it's kind of a little bit of what your last caller was talking about, the private equity, naming rights, all that kind of stuff. It's not really to catch the Big Ten and the SEC because there's no catching the Big Ten and the SEC. Let's just, keep it real and keep it moving. So I was like, okay, if they're not really trying to catch them, what are they trying? Oh, it's a war chest. You see, possible things popping off with the ACC. So let's build up some money to get some teams in here. Mm-hmm. And that's what I think is happening. And we could speculate all day long what teams, but let's just stick to Florida State and Clemson. You lose those two, there goes a lot of revenue streams for the ACC. Other teams aren't going to be happy because, as we all know, you keep talking about this red line. People are trying to stay above that red line. At least teams that want to compete, your Louisvilles that want to compete. NC State likes to compete. Virginia Tech, at one point did compete. I think they'd like to get there again. Maybe. That's just my speculation. But everyone's trying to stay above the fray. So if you're looking at making less money than the Big 12, then why stay in the ACC? If you look at a commissioner like Brett Yormark, he has some exciting things going on. You're seeing a lot of positives with the Big 12. Apparently, our net worth is a heck of a lot more than a lot of people thought. So, why not jump ship? It's not like a lot of these schools were in the ACC since 1900 or anything.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
How deep do those loyalties run? I understand there's some founding members and whatnot. Whoopie-doo. The Pac-12 was around forever, and people didn't seem to mind jumping for money. So, it's about. The game right now is consolidating your conferences and getting the floor worked out, getting the basics worked out so the dust can settle. Mm-hmm. And everyone knows this ACC situation is bad. It's bad for ESPN too. They got a lot of information they don't want out there in the public view. They don't want Numbskull News making a video, making fun of them, calling them a bunch of communists or fascists or something. So let's go ahead and just keep that in private and let's work something out. And I think what's going on behind the scenes is, a lot of these ACC schools.
Yeah.
What's that?
No, I was just you're kind of in agreement with the previous caller.
Somewhat. I don't know about Stanford and Cal kind of thing, but
yeah. But the Big 12
in general.
Being able to help out these ACC schools to come on in, and that's going to help the Big 12's value right away, and so they're going to be able to buy back their stake or or whatever that they give to the private equity firm. It could be a win-win in this situation.
Because these lower ACC schools, they don't want to be the next Oregon State and Washington State.
Yeah.
They want to make sure they're good for the long term,
Yeah,
and they're not just blowing in the wind.
yeah,
So if they could work something out to where whoever wants to get out can get out, and they can collect a big pot of money, and you can rebuild it with the Memphises and South Floridas of the world, cool.
yes.
And
yes.
they can get their contract, even though it might be less, but it can get re-up till 2036 or whenever.
Yeah,
And
Yeah.
then they're secure. They know what they have coming in. And all these schools, they want to know what's coming in for the years to come so they can
Yes.
make their plan.
yes. They need
Oregon
a
State
budget.
and Washington State, but yeah.
Yeah,
It's like Oregon State and Washington State have been put in a really bad situation because they don't know year to year what's coming in.
yeah.
I mean, they know for the next year or two, but that's, they like to plan 4 or 5 more years out.
yeah.
And right now, those two can't do that. And everyone else doesn't want, Boston College is a good university. They want to be secure.
Yeah.
Syracuse, Georgia Tech, Wake Forest. So it's basically a controlled demolition. That's what I think is going to happen.
That's a very good description. Controlled demolition. Yeah.
And eventually, they will eventually lose their autonomy. I don't know if they'll lose it right away.
Yeah.
I think part of the thing is trying to keep, make sure they keep their auto bid for the CFP
Yeah.
in place, intact. Make sure they still have a little bit of respect going forward. It's still going to be a good academic conference. So
let me ask you a question, Numbskull News. I'm going to go there with you. I am going to go there with you. What about Notre Dame? I mean, does this shake them from college football independence?
the one thing I think that may shake them, because there's a lot of things hitting Notre Dame that's not hitting everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, they're having to, because there was a law passed under the Trump era, where a lot of these big-time academic universities now have to start paying taxes on their endowments. That's a lot of money, and it's hard to make that up. And if you're independent, it may even be tougher. So along with the revenue-sharing lawsuits, all of that crap going on, they also have to now start paying taxes on their endowments, which I'm pretty sure with Notre Dame it's considerable.
Mm-hmm.
So the money situation may actually push them more towards the Big Ten than ever before. Now, that doesn't mean they'll do it. They are hard-headed, and I understand that. I am too. So that's one option. The Big Ten's the easy option. There's a second option out there, is that they contact Brett Yormark and say, look, we want to put all of our stuff in the Big 12 except for football, but we'll play the 5 games with you, and then barter. What kind of money can we get from the Big 12? If it's enough money, maybe we'll do it.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a thought.
Yeah.
Now, they would rather do that with the Big Ten or with the SEC, but I don't know if the Big Ten or the SEC would be willing.
Yeah.
They'd be willing for a full membership, but not this half in, half out thing. But I think the Big 12 would.
Yeah. Interesting. Thank you, Numbskull
But those are the
News.
two paths.
I appreciate the call. Everybody check them out.
And if anyone's thinking of visiting Texas, going on a vacation, wait till October. It's a little cooler. It's a little cooler.
Yeah.
Just a little tourist information from Numbskull News.
If the fat guy from Minnesota goes down to Texas, Greg the Cooler, I'll cool that place off pretty quick. Thank you, sir. I appreciate the call. Everybody check out Numbskull News. Fantastic college football YouTube channel. Thank you, sir. I appreciate the call.
No problem. Great show as always, and appreciate you, Greg.
Got it. Thank you.
Call from
BJ.
BJ, the floor is yours.
Hey, Greg, this is really quick. Your show is always entertaining.
Yes, sir.
I think the best thing about your show, hear people from everywhere with different perspectives.
Yeah.
And it's intriguing. So
Yeah.
the last few callers, I've been intently listening, and great points that both of them made. However, I disagree with them on a multitude of fronts, and I just want to add just an opposing view.
You got it.
Right?
Yep.
So, I know we a lot of people look at it from a fan perspective. If they like a team or a conference, they kind of bend the narrative for it, so it makes them be the good guy, or they win in the end.
Mm-hmm.
But if you look at the ACC, the Big Ten is going out and getting a loan, $1 billion loan, right? Where the reports are that this equity firm will take a stake in the Big 12, up to 20%. So that means that those Big 12 teams will have to forfeit money in the future. They get a bunch of cash inflow up now, but based off the agreement, 5-10 years, they're going to be losing tens of millions of dollars a year in payback fees, right? Cool. So if I'm a team, if I'm an ACC team, if I'm the ACC, if I get $1 billion from 4 teams, let's say that each team pays $250 million, that's $1 billion that I have as a war chest. That's not a loan. That's not some kind of funky math. That's $1 billion in cash.
Mm-hmm.
Why can't, as an ACC, why can't I use that same $1 billion in cash to keep the Louisvilles, the Pitts, the NC States, Virginia Techs? Why can't I use that? And I can tell them, you're not going to get a deduction in pay in 5 years because of this loan that the Big 12 has. To me, that $1 billion in exit fees is far superior than that $1 billion loan.
Yes.
So,
but true. But then you're also facing the reality that your media deal is about to drop, and there's gonna be a gulf between yourself and the Big 12. And if those schools would go to the Big 12, that media number is gonna go up, and there's gonna be a bigger gulf between the Big 12 and the ACC. So it might not be the best move for those ACC schools that the Big 12 are interested to take the exit money and stay. It might be the better move to have that exit money that the Big 12 is going to use to get over to the Big 12, the higher land, when the Russian waters come in.
Greg, you're a smart guy. That makes no sense.
I don't know about that either, but go ahead.
I'm going to tell you that makes no sense. The Big 12, like, I know it's for people who get online and they run with these narratives that are reported, right? The facts are the Big 12 has a split deal. Their football goes to ESPN, their basketball goes to Fox, right? That's how their deal is, right? Their deal with ESPN is a pro rata deal, right? Pro rata deal. The ESPN owns, I think, 80% of the ACC network. So why would you divest into something you own to invest in something that you don't own? They put the Big 12's non-tier 1 games on the ESPN Plus platform. So I don't see the ESPN divesting from ACC a product that they own to go to the Big 12. That's one. For two, they have a pro rata. The pro rata, I'm not going to, we've seen over the last years that the ESPN is not going to just break up a contract at the convenience of a conference. The deals runs, I think, until 2030, if I'm not mistaken. I could be off, 2030, 2031. Mm-hmm. So at the most, currently the Big 12 makes less than the ACC teams. And if you listen to Jim Phillips, I'm not saying he's right or he's wrong, but if you listen to what he's said on record, that the ESPN clause, the 2027 date, is not a renegotiation, that it's a look-in, right? So they can't get less money. That's what he said, not me. You can believe him or not. So if I'm an ACC team and I follow my commissioner says we won't get less money. We currently make more than the Big 12 now. Why would I leave? Why would I leave to then go to the Big 12? And you add on to the fact, if you leave to go to the Big 12, the Big 12 has to. If the Big 12 pays the ACC this mythical $1 billion that they don't have, right? Mm-hmm. Wouldn't it be, I guess, safe to assume that those 6 ACC teams will not come into the Big 12 as a full member? Right? That's safe, because if I have to pay you $1 billion as a Big 12 office, I have to get that money back somewhere. And so that means if I'm an ACC team making $44 million a year, in 10 years I'm going to be minus the loan payback, and I won't come in as a full member. So to me, I'm not saying it's going to happen or it's not going to happen, but the numbers don't add up. If I'm a fan, I'll make it work. But as a business, there's no way possible that I see teams. And mind you, I don't think the Big 12 can pay ACC teams exit fees, and if the exit fees are $140 million on top of the grant of right, that's still a lot of money that these schools do not have. So, and mind you, if you can give me information or a perspective that maybe I'm missing, but as I follow the numbers just don't add up to me in real life.
All right. I appreciate the call, BJ. You bring up some good points. Thank you so much. Great call. We have disagreement. Will the Big 12 be attractive for some ACC schools? Will the Big 12 use some of their private equity money to secure some ACC schools? We have disagreement among the Big 12 community in the PATC community. We've got disagreements everywhere. People are saying you're wrong, you're right, you're wrong. It's all over the place.
Call from
Ryan Thomas.
Ryan Thomas is on the line. He's going to let it rip. I know he is. The floor is yours.
Folks are putting American cheese all over burgers in the call, Greg, and it's driving me nuts. It's driving me nuts, Greg.
Yes.
It's driving me nuts. I want to kind of tie things together, and I apologize. So cut me off if I'm yapping too long. But first of all, I find it funny that we're talking about consolidation and expansion at the same time, and contraction at the same time. What the hell are you all thinking, people?
Look, first of all, you make a great point. But second of all, I got to go where the story goes. And Josh Whitman,
but
I had to cover it. I had to cover it.
No, I'll make my point. My point here. The reason why this is being talked about, there are not going to be 2 super conferences, the Big Ten and the SEC. There isn't. And the reason why is because they both have somewhat exclusive membership requirements, and there's no way in hell you're going to convince the DOJ at all that you can't allow schools willing to pay to be excluded from being able to compete at the top level of athletic sports because they don't fit in culturally or geographically. That's not going to fly, and that's going to be shot down quicker than a bunch of ducks. It's just not going to happen. I think what the key aspect to realize here is the line of demarcation will be how much money is your athletic department willing to spend. Remember a couple months ago how Charlie Baker talked about kind of a quasi-self-elect opt-in division that would be based on how much you're willing to spend? Let's put the pieces together, people. That's where it's heading. So let's also talk about the ACC. The ESPN has already recouped all its capital costs in the ACC network. Okay, it's now officially, it's got its ROI. It doesn't care what happens to the ACC network afterwards, because right now it's solely the period of profit for the ACC. This is the upside of the ACC network deal. ESPN doesn't care. It's recovered its ROI. It's a sunk cost. The other thing to keep in mind, folks, with liquidating damages and exit fees, and you also have to understand this too, that there will not be $1 billion in exit fees in the ACC. If you guys don't understand that, talk to a litigating attorney who actually deals with remedies, and you will find out really quick that's not how it works. What's going to end up happening, if you want to talk about the ACC being reimagined or reimaged or reconstituted.
Reconstructed, reconfigured. Those were the two precise words.
Yeah. If you want to talk about it, I would put another piece together. Okay. I don't know about whether or not Ivy League schools come into it now or eventually. I think the timing on that is too sporadic. But I will say this. I could very easily see the Big East merging into the ACC, keeping that autonomous status and having a bunch of private schools and like-minded, schools like Cal and UConn are very similar, kind of pulling together their resources. And I could see, like I've said 1 billion times before, I could see a separate new football-only conference being formed basically out of any of the G5s that want to spend to compete, plus Oregon State and Washington State, plus any of the ACC schools that want to continue to fund and spend on football. I think that when we think about reconstituted or reconstructed or whatnot, we have to think that the ACC is not going to be first of all, there is no automatic bid. There is no auto bid in the playoff structure for any of the Power 5 conferences specifically. It's the top 4 that finish. So essentially, if you're the bottom 5, you're in the same territory as the G5. So in essence, what the reality is the ACC can go in a different direction, and I honestly think how many are left is the biggest question that I have, because how many does the Big Ten take? How many does the SEC take? What's left, and how much is that worth paying? Now, ESPN can opt out of that deal, but let me tell you, if their contract is left with nothing but SMU, Cal, Stanford, Wake Forest, Syracuse, Boston College, they're dumping that deal quicker than a hot potato. It's not happening. And as far as the private equity money, that's not going towards expansion because it's not needed. There's no need. There's no need for it whatsoever, because the only people that need to be taken care of are the 4 or 5 ACC schools that are left over, and that may be, if ESPN doesn't renew the board, you're only talking about 2 or 3 years worth of damages. So get real, folks.
Okay, all right. So you're completely dismissing the possibility, because you're completely dismissing the possibility of the Big 12 luring some ACC schools using that private equity money to pay some of their settlement costs to the ACC, to jump from the ACC to Big 12. You're completely dismissing the idea that the Big 12 might use some of that $1 billion private equity money to do such a thing.
Absolutely, because the reason why is because nobody knows how much those exit fees are going to be. They're not going to be $140 million. The thing is the ACC members cannot make a profit above what they would have otherwise had gotten in their TV deal on the exit fees. No judge is going to hold that up, Greg. It's going to be tossed out. So none of that money is going to go towards that. I mean, the amount is the Florida State and Clemson pay the bulk of it. Everybody else might end up paying a smaller amount. At the end of the day, the only one that matters are the 4 or 5 that are left behind, left in the cold for 2-3 years, and making them whole. And you know what? Florida State and Clemson might end up paying the bulk of that tab as it is anyway, because they want to get out faster. So, I mean, I think that that's the other thing. And plus, any ACC brands you're bringing in, why are you going to take away money from your schools being able to pay coaches and players to compete, to elevate your brand and get into the CFP for brands like Louisville, who are pure on value brands. It doesn't make any sense. It'd be a horrible business decision. The reality is these schools, if the ACC is reconstructed, it's likely that the Louisvilles or the Virginia Techs or whoever, or the Georgia Techs or whoever does leave, are likely, if the Big 12 even gets one or two, it's likely that these schools are going to get out relatively cheaper, let out, because they want to have a certain, a reconfigured ACC based on private schools. They may want some members to leave, and they might make it very easy for them to leave. But, unless the Big 12 is getting FSU and Clemson as members, using private equity money to bring in bringing in a Louisville or a Virginia Tech or an NC State or a Pitt is insane. That's absolutely insane. They're not worth it. I think that they'll probably get out cheaper than they normally will, but unless the only one that it's worth paying that money for is two schools that are going to actually increase your brand and increase your television contract potential and your CFP contract potential.
So you're absolutely convinced that there is going to be a regression in payment for settlement costs to get out of the ACC.
Yep, absolutely.
And you believe that because you believe the judge is not going to, well, first of all, it ain't going to be the judge. It's going to be, the parties involved.
Yeah, but Greg, no party is going to pay more than they have to. No party is going to fork out $140 million plus X, is going to fork out $200 million if they don't have to, especially if none of the ACC exit fee even remotely meets any requirement of liquidating damages and under any legal theory. So, I mean, it's ridiculous. I mean, no lawyer is going to do that. I mean, maybe they'll pay $30 million, maybe, but nobody's paid $200 million outside of FSU and Clemson. No one's paying more than $40 million outside of FSU and Clemson. I think it's ridiculous.
Well, then I'm not sure there's an incentive for the ACC to settle then.
Well, that's the question. There is an incentive because the way that Jim Phillips and everyone's conducted business, there is a possibility that grant of rights gets thrown out from the 27 to 36 period, and then all of a sudden we're right back down to where we started.
Maybe, but maybe not. So you're paying for certainty. The schools that want to get out.
But why are you going to mortgage? Why are you going to mortgage your future for four schools in the ACC that are basically they're not even at they're probably in the middle half of the pack of the Big 12 in value generation.
Well,
honestly.
Well, first of all, I'm not saying that the Big 12. I don't think anybody's saying that the Big 12 is going to use all their equity to pay out for all the ACC schools. It's the carrot. It's part of the carrot. It's part of the carrot. Like, you wouldn't be for the Big 12 spending $80 million of that private equy, to put
$80 million out of $1 billion is a big difference, Greg.
Yeah,
so,
well,
I mean,
yeah, we're not talking like. I don't think anybody's saying like the Big 12 spends $1 billion on four like 250 each for the. Okay, I understand what you're saying. We're just going around in circles, but I do appreciate it, sir. I get your point. So,
sorry for the rant, Greg.
No problem.
People are putting American cheese on burgers here.
Appreciate it, Ryan Thomas.
I have to stop the American cheese, Greg. Anyway, take care, my friend.
You're doing a beautiful job. Thank you, sir. Ryan Willie, great call by Ryan Thomas. Ryan Willie, the Big 12 would make a big mistake. Use it private equity for adding schools. Use it for paying players. The evil badger, Ryan Willie, agrees with Ryan Thomas. Got to get ready for them Zach Brown and Kenny Chesney concert tonight while dodging the storms. Thank you, Ryan Willie, for your super chat, for your continued incredible generosity to this channel. I do appreciate it.
Call from
I did not get the name.
Dan?
Dan, can you hold on for just a moment, please?
Yep.
I do appreciate it. Ryan Thomas, like he said in his phone call, said callers are all wrong. Private equity is not for expansion. Expedition, Greg. I got a feeling that the Big Ten could get bigger in 25 or 26. PATC, can't wait for the season to start. Thank you, Expedition Greg, for being a member. Wow. For the 7th month early, Pete, Cloak, and Dagger. Thank you so much for your generosity. Thank you for so much for being a member of our channel for 7 months. You are hereby knighted, Cloak and Dagger, once again. Expedition Greg, thank you so very much. If you are new to the channel, or if you haven't done it yet, please subscribe to our channel. Open up those notifications. We can come on live at any time. We could come on live again later tonight. As you see, we've had over 400 people for most of the show. Join in, become part of the PATC community, peek around the corner, college football. Thank you for joining. If you haven't done it yet, please hit the subscribe button. Dan, thanks for calling. Thank you for your patience. The floor is yours.
Thanks, Greg. Great show as always.
Appreciate
In my
it.
opinion on the Big 12 and private equity, if they could somehow get Florida State and Clemson, I said by far they would put the money as much as they could to entice them if the Big Ten SEC wouldn't take them.
Yeah.
Because if they would get them for 4 or 5 years, and during that time, the payout for the Big 12 college football playoff would be bigger per team. And then if Clemson and Florida State would happen to win a national title during that time, it would even move those numbers up higher on that point. Unlikely, but let's just say that happened for 4 or 5 years. But then the second part of it, like the mid-tier schools in the ACC, I think that the Big 12 would also use that money for them, just for anything, to further destabilize the ACC and potentially just create basically such a huge chasm between them and everybody else below the SEC and Big Ten. They would be solidified. They get more money in their next TV contract besides that. And then I know you mentioned something about UConn last night. Maybe I could see that being a possibility as well. But I'll get off the line, Greg. A great show as always. Take care and have a good day.
You got it. Appreciate it.
All right.
Great call.
You bet. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Great call. Look, that was a pro Big 12. Go ahead, use some private equity to lure some ACC schools in. We've got we've got pro private equity. Holy smokes. D5 Terps Flugs, any chance to add a caller tag on the screen so we can see who's talking? I'll try to figure that out, D5 Terps. That's a great suggestion.
Call from
John Grove.
John Grove, Mr. Kansas State Wildcat. The floor is yours. What are you thinking, sir?
Well, I do want to make a correction to what BJ had to say about the Big 12 and its media deal with Fox and ESPN. And I say this as an ESPN Plus employee working for K-State, that ESPN is investing more into the Big 12 when it comes to the football side of things, mainly because there's been a lot of Big 12 campuses that already have the equipment and the facilities necessary for TV broadcasts, whether it's just for ESPN Plus or ESPNU, ESPN, ABC. I mean, they have the facilities that are on par, that are able to produce the broadcast. So I say that from the Big 12 regards. But it's not. But Fox also has college football content. They need backfiller content as well. They have it with the Big 12 and the Mountain West as well. They'll likely give the Big 12 more so the 3:30 times, unless it's a big game. Then they'll likely just switch with the with the Big Ten coverage the other day as well. So that's mainly what I'm looking at. Like, let's just say Utah's playing Oklahoma State, and then the Big Ten doesn't necessarily have the biggest game that week for Fox, so they might move that towards the 3:30 slot. They'll likely move Utah and Oklahoma State to the bigger slot. So I think, based on what we've seen throughout the last deal that the Big 12 has made, there's going to be a little bit more of a push for more content from a football standpoint for the Big 12, because they already have the facilities necessary to do the broadcast. That is a very important factor. And then Fox is investing a little bit more into the basketball side of things as well, considering that they can not only, that they have the Big East and the Big Ten, they can also try and get some more Big 12 coverage with several of the more lucrative brands that they're bringing in that regard. But to answer, I'm a little bit out of touch when it comes to the private equity, because I've heard several things about how it could potentially be used, whether it's for expansion, whether it's for student enrollment, a lot of stuff. I mean, I guess I supposedly would say that if the Big 12 wants to kind of lean towards several of those bigger brands and entice further student enrollment, especially for a school like West Virginia, where I've heard a lot of West Virginia fans, there's been a lot of concerns about several enrollment issues. The same thing's kind of applying towards the Kansas schools in a way. But I guess if you try to go east and go for several of the bigger ACC brands like Louisville, Pittsburgh, Virginia Tech, I would probably say that gives a little bit more of an enticing effort towards getting several of the students, like knowing that you're going to be there at a fall Saturday in Morgantown watching West Virginia play several of your biggest rivals. So yeah. I don't know. I'm kind of on the outside realm looking at all the perspectives. I still enjoy your content as well, but I want to hear your thoughts on kind of everything that I just mentioned. If there's anything wrong or right about what I had to say.
I don't think there is anything wrong or right now, sir. I think we're all just giving our takes to it.
Gotcha.
I mean, look, the private equity thing, I have no idea. I had a live show yesterday talking about how is the Big 12, what is your opinion? Will they use some of that private equity to use for expansion? We had a discussion. A person that I know who has helped me for years, I call him BTM, short for Big Ten Man. We talked with a person on the money perch from a Big 12 institution. I can't say the name of the institution, who's had discussions with somebody in the athletic department about, putting numbers on a napkin, just talking about having a discussion. Could the Big 12 use private equity to lure some of the ACC schools when it implodes? There is nobody that I talk to who thinks the ACC is not going to implode, not going to change drastically. There's too much power, too much money, too much influence. It's just going to happen. I don't know what it's going to cost Florida State and Clemson. We've reported that they're willing to spend a little bit a higher number than any of us anticipated if they get out now. According to Josh Pate, it sounds like that's coming to fruition. We've also been told, one more thing, we've also been told 1,000 times that the Big Ten and the SEC are not willing to talk to anybody, first party talks, unless those schools exactly know when they're going to get out, when they're going to get out, when they're going to be able to grab their own media rights back. So, is all this been going on? Has there been big negotiations going on or not? I don't know. I really don't know. Again, very interesting. But I'm not going to sit here and say, you bring up, you're very logical. I don't know, sir.
Yeah, I was just making sure if there was any wrong kinks here or there, if there was any if there was any false information, because from the television and the TV production standpoint, that's really towards my strengths in terms of where I was sort of arguing. But I just wanted to make that case because I think one of the callers, I think BJ, I'm sure he knew what I think he knew what he was interpreting, but I think the messaging there was a little bit wrong. One more thing as well, you keep mentioning about the cheesification of America.
Yeah.
Is it more so towards the like American cheese, or is it just any kind of cheese, for that matter?
Well, it isn't really about cheese itself. It's about the cheesification of America. Is this need for people to put cheese on meat? We decades ago we did not do this, but the big dairy, this great coordinated conspiracy that has affected most Americans. You got to lump a bunch of cheese on your hamburger and everything else. So cheese is good. Cheese is fine.
Yeah.
Grilled cheese. Dip your chip in cheese. Cheese is great. But this need to have hamburgers is a beautiful thing without the cheese. You don't put cheese on your beautiful steak. You don't put cheese on your beautiful fillet of fish. You don't put cheese on your beautiful pork chop. Don't put cheese on your hamburger. And a whole bunch of other examples of that. So that's basically what I'm saying.
How about tacos, though?
Tacos?
How about tacos?
No.
Yeah, no?
No.
Really?
My
Wow.
wife grew up in Mexico City. She was there throughout her whole childhood into her adult years. We got married. We've been married for 22 years. They make their tacos. First of all, they don't use flour tortillas. It's corn tortillas. They put their pork. They put their beef, whatever meat there is. They put their cilantro. They put their onions. They put their homemade salsa. They do some other seasoning. They do their avocado. They may put their serrano pepper, whatever they're doing. And what they do is they make their tacos. They don't dump the cheese on there like we do here. What they do is they'll cut up some cheese, put it in the cubes, put it on a dish separate. So if you wanted to add it, or if you wanted to take a bite, if you want to take a piece of that cheese, you can do it. But they don't slather on this melted cheese over your beautiful meat that you've been marinating for 24 hours. You don't lather this cheese on there. It's got to stay separate. It's got to stay separate.
Well, I respect your opinion on that. That is for certain, sir.
Yeah.
All righty.
Just my take. Well, just my take. All right, sir.
Hey, we all have our different takes.
Yeah.
Of course, we all have our different taste buds. So
you got it.
You know what? I'll just leave it at that. Appreciate the call, Greg.
Appreciate it, man. Thank you. Call again.
Have a good night.
The wife will not allow Mireya Hernandez Garcia Flugar will not allow flour tortillas in the house.
Call from
BJ.
BJ, the floor is yours.
Hey, Greg. Again, thanks. I wanted to clear up something. I am not anti-Big 12, right? I think there's this misconception that the last caller, very reasonable, and I agree with him. I think that ESPN is investing more into the Big 12's, helping the Big 12 with their ESPN Plus kind of transition. But again, it's ownership versus partnership, right? Like they own parts of the ACC network. The Big 12 agreement is more of a partnership, right? I think the Big 12 is a really, really solid conference, right? I think the teams are, out of all the 4 power leagues, I think they are more connected in terms of the group is more of a singularly minded group, So, and I think that helps for their longevity, right? Big 12 teams have this mentality of, hey, we have to stick together, right? And you don't really hear that coming from other conferences. So it's not an anti-Big 12 sentiment, but it's more along the lines of, I'm just telling you what, from a non-fan's perspective, this is how it's viewed. And, because when you look at the Big 12, because I hear a lot of Big 12 fans say the ACC or Frankenstein Conference or whatever, but when you look at the Big 12, they have 3 Mountain West teams, Utah, BYU, and TCU came. I think TCU came from the Mountain West too, right? They picked 4 Pac-12 teams, picked up 3 American teams, right? So it's kind of a hodgepodge of teams, and not even like high branded teams, solid teams, but I wouldn't put any of those, the last 7-8 teams that come into the Big 12. I wouldn't put any of those teams as a top branded team. But I think they fit with what I think the Big 12 is conferences that are not bad, not great. They put on, solid teams, right, on the field, but they're not going to blow you away with TV viewership. They're not going to blow you away with endowments. They're not going to blow you away financially or athletically. Outside of basketball, they're pretty good. That's just what they are, right? And so I don't want Big 12 teams to think all because I'm not pro Big 12. That doesn't mean I'm anti Big 12.
Got it.
Right. So that's all. I appreciate it.
Appreciate it, BJ. Thanks for calling. Carrie Gold Nose, thank you for your gift membership. 5 gifted memberships, and I do not see who are the 5 who got the gift memberships. So I do apologize for that. Yeah, I don't see it. But for those 5 who were gifted a membership by Carrie Gold Nose, please say thank you to Carrie. Please say thank you to Carrie. Hold on.
Call from
Edward the Auburn Tiger.
Mr. Auburn Tiger, can you hold on for a moment, please?
Sure can, sir.
I do appreciate it. Carrie Gold Nose, thank you for the incredible generosity you've given our channel once again. You, Carrie, and the 5 who were gifted a membership, because of your generosity, you have been knighted once again, cloak and dagger. Thank you so very much. We've also, I got to get caught up here. I do apologize for not getting the people's super chats. Rock and Rant, Mr. Hurricane. It seems like everybody has forgotten that there's more cloak going on and not just the public daggers. Being loud isn't always a smart play. Absolutely correct. Rock and Rant, absolutely correct. Miami's been silent. What's going on? Thank you, Rock and Rant, for your generosity. I do appreciate it. Helmer Hennison, how significantly will non-revenue sport athletes be receiving, if any? Could this reduce number of sports offered and increase instability? I think a lot of people are scared about that, honestly. You got even Gene Smith, the athletic director of Ohio State, who's leaving the job, saying that some non-revenue sports are going to be de-emphasized. Maybe even scholarships taken away for some of them. There might be coming club sports teams. I don't know. Look, it's going to depend on the school, the athletic department, and how much money the non-revenue sport athletes are going to get. Are they going to get some of the $22 million direct payments? Now, Illinois, Josh Whitman, which we have talked about today in his fear of more consolidation, Illinois has already come out and said that $22 million for now is going to get split in half between male and female athletes. So some of that money is going to be spent on non-revenue athletes on the women's side if your women basketball team does not make revenue for your athletic department, which most don't. So So it all depends. On some schools, some athletic departments, a lot of these non-revenue athletes are not going to get any of that money. I would presume. We shall see. Thank you, Helmer Hennison, for your super chat, for your continued generosity. Never heard of cheeseburgers in paradise? Nope. Nah, I don't think there is cheeseburger. Well, let me say this. Whatever your heart desire, you will get in paradise. So, Mr. Helmer Henderson, if you desire cheese on your burger in paradise, it will come to you. But not me. Not me, sir. Nope, not even paradise. Mr. Auburn Tiger, the floor is yours. I'm very interested to hear what you've got to say about what Josh Pate said, because I might be incorrect, but I believe you have been on the side of, hey, SEC, they might eat first, they might eat second, they might eat third, they might eat fourth. And if Josh Pate is having some information about how the ACC is screwed and Florida State's getting out with some others, maybe, just maybe, this story goes over to the side of the SEC is going to make sure they're going to grab the top 4 brands. Mr. Auburn Tiger, the floor is yours.
Well, first of all, Greg, another great show. And I want to tell you, because if you followed this plan in your heart to have this peak around the corner, it truly is a community. It truly is a family.
Yeah,
and we thank you very much, because I don't know everyone on this, but I love hearing everyone, and you become a part of something. And so I want to thank you for that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
And Josh Pate, I think he is onto something. A lot of times, Greg, you can learn where we're going moving forward by kind of looking backwards.
Ooh.
And
okay.
I can remember that when Oklahoma and Texas, when it came time for the negotiation between ESPN, Fox, Big 12, and SEC, and those two teams, I can remember there was a sticking point in the negotiations, and I can remember hearing your show, and you said Fox needed to be made whole in order for the deal to go through.
Yeah.
That is a very, very important statement that you made. What that tells us is the networks are driving the train. I'm not saying exclusively. I'm not saying SEC, Big 10, ACC, Big 12 don't have a voice. But the networks is driving the train. They have a plan. And so let's forward to now. I honestly believe that ESPN is in the catbird seat. They own the ACC. They own the SEC. They have a big say in where the pieces go. Now, we know Florida State and Clemson are leaving regardless. We know that. That can't be stopped. However, ESPN can control the pieces. Just like back then when Oklahoma and Texas, SEC laid the groundwork for Oklahoma and Texas to join the SEC. It was the exit fee mentioned, but how it got paid got lost in the shuffle. And I believe ESPN wanted that because it did not want to disclose. They paid the freight for Oklahoma and Texas to go into the SEC.
Yes, sir.
ESPN is quiet. I mean, you look at all the big-time reporting concerning realignment. You don't hear it coming from ESPN people.
Yeah.
Because you hear it coming from everywhere else. SEC is silent. They're not saying anything. I mean, it's like Greg Sankey is just following the script.
Yeah.
The people around SEC not saying anything. There are teams in the ACC that are not saying anything. So I believe there is a negotiation, just like Josh Pate has alluded to. I believe ESPN is in the catbird seat. And just like Fox was looking after its own interests, ESPN is looking at their own interests.
So,
and they're go ahead.
No, I know you're. This is a great phone call. You're on a roll. I'm going to push the envelope with you. All right, I'm going to push the envelope with Mr. Auburn Tiger. If you say if you are correct, and you just might be, and Mr. Auburn Tiger, you might have been correct all this time. Josh Pate gets a little bit of information. He says the ACC is screwed. He says the ACC is going to be reconfigured. He's getting this information. What if ESPN is moving the invisible velvet hand? They're orchestrating this just like they did with Oklahoma and Texas. To the most part. I mean, Fox had to play some part of it because they had to be made whole, just like what you said. Are we, Mr. Auburn Tiger, are we looking at a future where there's going to be an announcement made in the next 9 Saturdays in which we hear that the ACC, everything's going to be made whole, the SEC, they're going to be advancing with a North Carolina, a Virginia, a Florida State, a Clemson. The SEC is going to be grown by 4. Is that what you're alluding to?
Greg, I almost can run around my house right now. Look at this, Greg. Okay, they control. I mean, look back at the playoffs. Okay, when Fox, when Big Ten got the deal with Fox, with CBS and NBC, there seemed to be some major players on the field, and everyone was saying, surely the playoffs is not going to be ran and sustained and kept by ESPN. And you know what happened, Greg? ESPN, smiling again. they have the playoffs, and I believe the same thing could be happening now with all of these pieces that are moving. I mean, they control the Big 12, they control SEC, they control ACC, they control what's happening on the board. And sure, they don't control it to the fullness. We know that, not exclusively. Clemson and Florida State are leaving. That's no doubt about it. But they have enough money, they have enough influence to manipulate the pieces on the board. I tell you, if ESPN wants the SEC to get Florida State and Clemson, they're going to get them. They might get. They're going to. And the SEC is going to negotiate with ESPN, and they probably already have. They probably have been negotiating these last couple of years concerning the night game, concerning the additions they want, and the additions that ESPN wants.
Is this
they
why?
Have been running, sir?
Is this why I was told on May 23rd, May 24th, May 28th? Is this why I was told from somebody in the industry, Greg, tear down those odds that you have up on any given Saturday sports book when we had it Florida State and Clemson to the SEC and North Carolina, Virginia to the SEC? I was told, Greg, pull back, tear down those odds, and that's what I did because the Big Ten ain't quite there yet. Is this why I'm being told? Because Florida State and Clemson are going to the SEC along with North Carolina, Virginia? And may I add, if that is what indeed happens, it's not just the Auburn Tiger man in the PATC community, Edward, Mr. Auburn Tiger, that got it right. You remember Mr. Auburn Tiger? There was a tweet posted a couple years ago from what is that?
Yes.
What was that account called? Swim, Swam, Swim, Meet.
Yes.
And it said, by the way, everybody, Florida State, Clemson, North Carolina, Virginia to the SEC. So is it going to be Swim Swam and Mr. Auburn Tiger who nails this story? Is this why I was told to rip down those odds? Greg, don't do it. Pull it down. It ain't like it ain't what you're saying it is.
Greg, it absolutely possibly can. And I'm going to tell you another thing you left out. I forgot when this, about a year ago, so I think the gentleman down in Tampa got a hold of one of the contracts or something he got hold of. And remember, there was figures that Florida State was going to be being paid in the future, like 2026 or something.
Yeah.
And at first you thought it was the Big Ten. But when you look closer, it lined up with the SEC.
The Osceola project, those numbers were with SEC. Absolutely correct.
Yeah, it cannot be a coincidence. Cannot be a coincidence. And so I absolutely believe, because we think about this too, Greg, when the SEC announced, when it was announced that Oklahoma and Texas was going to the SEC, no one knew it. It come out of nowhere, okay? SEC, ESPN are masters at this kind of environment. And I'm not just bragging on us. I'm not saying the Big Ten is not. No one really knew that USC, UCLA was going to the Big Ten.
Well, somebody did. Somebody did. Somebody did.
But it was a little. But it was a little louder. It was a little louder than what was happening in the SEC concerning Oklahoma and Texas.
Yeah.
And so you're hearing nothing. You're seeing nothing. But based on history, I believe the same kind of things is being played out. And I know you're going to ask the next question. What about Notre Dame?
I was just going to ask. What about Notre Dame?
About Notre Dame. I believe, this is my personal belief, I believe Greg Sankey and the SEC all along has been coordinating with Notre Dame on the possibility of them coming to the SEC. He had built a strong relationship with that AD who became real close friends. I believe that while I'm not saying that Big Ten does not want Notre Dame, obviously they do. They've already had made a pre-contract for them to come and everything. And I'm not saying that the Big Ten does not want North Carolina. We know those are two biggest pieces on the puzzle. But I believe they might have underestimated the movements that ESPN and the SEC have been moving. Because I believe they've seen this a long time ago based on the evidence, like you said, the guy wrote about those 4 teams going to the SEC, the Osceola Project, and so forth and so on. What if we found out in the next 3 or 4 weeks, breaking news, that not only does the ESPN and SEC eat first, but it gets the 2 biggest pieces on the board, Notre Dame and North Carolina and a couple other teams. What would that look like, Greg?
Well, it would be massive. I don't believe Notre Dame's going to go to the SEC.
Okay. Let me say this to you, Greg.
But you know what, man? You've just had another incredible phone call. I do appreciate it. It's a great thing when you call us. You're a legendary caller. Please call us again, sir.
Always honored. Keep up the good work, Greg. Very much.
Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Mr. Auburn Tiger, he's called his shot. He's called his shot. Florida State, Clemson, Virginia, North Carolina, SEC. Now he's saying possibly Notre Dame. If you're going to try to connect the dots here, and the things that I've been told about pull back on the old Florida State, Clemson to the SEC. Pull back. Are we looking at a possibility of Florida State, Clemson, North Carolina, Virginia to the Big Ten, and then to the SEC? Florida State, Clemson, North Carolina, Virginia to the SEC, and Notre Dame and Miami, possible Georgia Tech to the Big Ten. I don't know. I don't know, but it's, again, Josh Pate received some information, and I know what I was told. So, is the SEC going to eat first, second, third, and fourth? And for those, look, if the ACC is screwed, like Josh Pate says, it's going to be reconstructed, reconfigured, and we're going to be hearing news about it in the next 9 Saturdays. And if the SEC eats first, second, third, and fourth, because that's how they're going to be able to do this all, and then that's going to leave a gaping wide open for the Big Ten to get what they need. A couple schools from the Southeast and Notre Dame. Could Notre Dame possibly stay independent when you've got top 4 teams going to the SEC and brand? Or would there be just a Notre Dame addition to the Big Ten and throw in that Stanford that we talked about a couple years ago? I don't know. Let's get to your super chats. I appreciate the incredible generosity. There has been a lot of great calls, a lot of great comments. Ryan Thomas, when all is said and done, we will find out the evil Badgers have been behind every single conspiracy in the world for the last 100 years. That probably is the most accurate statement we've had today. Thank you, Ryan Thomas. Thank you, Ryan Thomas, for your incredible generosity. Oh, my God! Helmer Henderson, great. What sources data led you to predict Florida State, Miami, Florida State, Clemson to no chalk? Has there been change of the minds among the bigwigs? Yes. There is no chalk. There is no Florida State and Clemson to the Big Ten. I mean, it could happen, but what sources or data? It was sources. It wasn't. It's nowhere. It's not nowhere near. It should not be the chalk. Doesn't mean it couldn't happen, but it's not the chalk. The Big Ten was gonna supposedly. It's not the chalk. And we had to make a quick change. And yes, it was a flip-flop. And yes, it came the 3rd week, the 4th week of May. And now we're in the 3rd week of June. Trying to connect the dots. And Josh Pate gave us some more information. Does the SEC, at the end of the day, when all this happens, do they eat first, second, third, and fourth? We know that the Big Ten doesn't believe they have much of a shot at North Carolina, but if they're given the opportunity, they'll take a swing. But what if they don't get an opportunity? Remember, this is about making ACC whole, the SEC whole, ESPN whole. This Fox and the Big Ten. If it's a big if, but if ESPN and Florida State and Clemson and Sankey, and they've all been working on this, and Jim Phillips and Wake Forest and Syracuse, they can do this without Fox and the Big Ten. And if this is the most secure way to get Florida State into the Power 2 conference, so be it. If this is the way that Clemson can get into the Power 2 conference, so be it. If this is a way to get North Carolina, Virginia, you remember the demographic issues, the student issues, so be it. Is this what we're looking at? Is this what we're looking at? Helmer Henderson, why does the SEC always eat first? Well, a couple reasons. They are the most valuable, powerful conference in the country. But more importantly, because ESPN owns the distribution rights, ACC owns the media rights of these schools. Fox doesn't have any say in any of this. Tony Petiti is on the outside. It doesn't look. Wait, hold on. Calling a timeout. If it's a controlled implosion, of the ACC, which if you listen to Josh Pate, remember the information came from the legal side. It's coming. It's suddenly coming. The ACC is screwed. A reconfiguration, a reconstruction of the ACC. Florida State is getting out and others. If it's a controlled implosion, the SEC is in the catbird seat. They're the ones that can do the controlled implosion. They don't have to make a deal with the Big Ten. They don't have to make a deal with Fox. Now, if it's an uncontrolled implosion, if there's a settlement between just the parties of Florida State, Clemson, and the ACC, then other things come into play. But if this is a controlled implosion, then we're circling back to the very first comments we made about this on December 26, 2022. The SEC can eat first, second, third, and fourth. Is that what we're looking at? Is that what we're looking at? And if we are looking at that, I mean, is Florida State fans, okay, they're going to be upset at first, but are you really going to be really upset because you're getting into the Power 2? You're getting into the most powerful conference there is. And the SEC presidents get what they want. They get that virgin country. They get the demographics. They get a different slice of the students. Virginia, North Carolina, we talked about the enrollment apocalypse that is coming. Grabbing North Carolina, Virginia is going to help that. You can brand those two states SEC country. And then maybe in the end, the Big Ten finally gets Notre Dame. That, by the way, in their own Big Ten contract, lifts everybody's revenue up according to reports what the contract reads. '57 Classic, it's been orchestrated, Greg. You better believe it's controlled. And if it's controlled, it's not controlled by Fox. It's not controlled by Ohio State. It's not controlled by Petiti, CBS, NBC, Notre Dame. It ain't controlled. Brother Manzone saying, don't care, Florida State to the Big Ten. And then you take in what I was told. May 23rd, May 28th, May 29th. I had to do a quick turn. I said, nope, we're ripping the odds down. Florida State, Clemson to the Big Ten, that's no longer the chalk. I was told that. I was given and more information that I can't get into, but nothing definitive on a controlled, nothing like that, else I would have reported to you. But it all fits. It all fits. Helmer Henderson, why is ESPN more powerful than Fox? Well, I mean, in this instance, they would be, because they're the ones who have the distribution. They have the content of ACC and SEC. Fox has no say in it. So in this case, ESPN would be more powerful. In the Big 12's case, as Mr. Auburn Tiger said, Fox had to be made whole. But in this case, Fox has nothing. If it's a controlled implosion. If it's a controlled implosion. Now, let's push the envelope just a little bit more. If it's Florida State, Clemson, Virginia, North Carolina, the SEC is going to do something they've never done. They're going to expand by 4 teams, more than 2 at one time. They're going to go to 20. They're going to need to probably bring on another media partner. Oh, by the way, ESPN has been doing a lot of side deals with Warner Brothers Discovery, TNT, TBS. Is that part of this? Because you're going to need, I think most definitely you're going to need another media partner. That is losing ESPN, that is willing to spend the money on some college football. Remember Warner Brothers Discovery's got some college football playoffs. They're sub-licensing from ESPN. Now, we're connecting dots here. We're either connecting dots and we're lacing it. We're going right where the story's going, or we're way off. Cornelius Greg, I like you, but stop the crazy talk. Amazon is lurking. TNT Sports is partnering with Fox and NBC for Big East. That's true. Justin R. Warner Brothers and ESPN might be the reason the ACC survived post Florida State and Clemson. And if you notice, Josh Pate does not say the end of ACC. Just that it's reconfigured.
Call from
Big Ten, brother.
Big Ten brother is on the line. The floor is yours.
What's going on, Greg? Don't you get the feeling if Florida State goes to the SEC, that it like lets all the air out of the room? I just feel like everyone's like, well, they want them to go to the Big Ten. You kind of feel like, okay, SEC grabs Florida State, take a seat between Florida and Georgia. You know what I mean? Just okay, we're here now. It seems so much better when Florida State was trying to get it. I hope they go to the Big Ten.
Yeah.
It just makes football more interesting. I mean, Florida State, Ohio State, Florida State, Michigan. You know, Florida State, Florida. We've watched that for 150 years.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, it's I get what you're saying. A lot of Big Ten fans want Florida State. A lot of Florida State want to go to the Big Ten. No question about it. And of course, we all understand the pure emotion of Florida State Seminole fans believing, and I think they did, get screwed. I get it all. But I can only tell you this. And I have not been able to unveil it all, but I was told to rip down those odds. There's a reason for it. And I don't know what the reason is, but Greg, pull back. The Florida State to the Big Ten, pull back. And you know, I don't know, sir.
Yeah, I think, I get what you're saying. It makes more sense for Florida State to go to the SEC, especially with that ESPN tie-in, because they can make it on Florida State easy. They can make it easy for Florida State, a lot easier for Florida State if they join the SEC than if they want to go to the Big Ten financially.
Yeah.
That makes all the sense in the world. But I just feel like, same with North Carolina. You you hear, I don't know if this is true, but somebody told me North Carolina was building a hockey arena, and then they wrestling. They were going to get a wrestling team, or maybe that was Florida State was going to get a wrestling team. And you just think like North Carolina, if they're serious about playing hockey, and then the AAU, it makes more sense. Well, then come to the Big Ten if you're going to add sports and then you want to be at the highest round academically. You just, we're going to go to the SEC. Well, then you can knock down the hockey arena and not have a wrestling team. It just seems like such a letdown for them to go to the SEC.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't know.
All right, man.
All right, buddy. I'll talk to you.
I appreciate the call. Appreciate it, man. Call again, sir.
Bye-bye.
Kerry Gold knows. I'll be honest. If Florida State and Clemson join the SEC along with members Texas and Oklahoma, the SEC will win every national championship until the end of time. You know what would also happen? Kerry Gold knows. You know what also would happen? If that happened? Let's pretend that SEC eats first, second, third, and fourth. Let's pretend Virginia, North Carolina go to the SEC and satisfy the SEC presidents. Let's pretend Florida State and Clemson go to the SEC because, that's good for ESPN. Everybody's satisfied. Everybody gets their back scratched. What also happens is immediately the SEC takes a little bit more of the college football playoff distribution money because Clemson and Florida State's success winning a national championship, especially Clemson's the last two championships. So remember that. The SEC would take a little bit more of the expanded college football playoff money. And by the way, I just want to show something. Helmer Henderson, Florida State to SEC, then kids table at supper. Thank you, Helmer Henderson, for your super chat. Thank you, Kerry Gall. Thank you, everybody, for all your super chats. I do appreciate it. I want to show you something. Now I'm going to get everybody mad at me. Everybody's going to get mad at me here. This is what I do. This is what we do. It's a family. It's a community. It's PATC. And in families, we get into arguments. We get into fights. And I'm not a host who tries to make everybody smile. Well, I do try to make you all smile. But I'm not trying to pump sunshine. I try to tell you the way it is. With the way we've been the chatter behind the curtain. 99% of this channel, 99.99% of this channel is college football. But remember what that 0.001% is? Does anybody remember what that little bit of slice of this channel is all about outside of college football? Can anybody in the chat tell me what is that 0.01%? No, it's not about cheese and burgers. There it is. There it is. There it is. UFO. So, it's not about cheese. It's not about hockey. It's not about my horrible singing. UFO. Okay. So I'm going to show you something. I'm going to show you something. I'm going to show you something. Now, there is this organization. I'm just going to show it to you. I am not saying it's true. I'm not saying nothing. All I'm doing is showing you something. Okay? So please, don't sue me. Don't say, Greg, no, I'm not responsible for the thing in Vegas. Could the aliens on the UFO be behind the cheat? There is this organization called MUFON, and I'm not a supporter of MUFON. They deal with UFO cases, yada, yada, yada. They have been, MUFON has been advertising this, that they're going to have, I don't even know what the date is. I've been so busy, but some sort of, maybe in July, I think it's July, where they're going to show everybody some materials. And I think it came from Russia. Somebody smuggled it out of Russia. I don't know what the story is. Somebody in the chat probably knows. But material that has been tested through the labs, in which 90% of it is completely unknown. The isotypes is off the board. Nothing on Earth could create this material, on and on and on. And I am not smart enough to know what it is. But they're going to introduce this new material, and it says this is the most important press conference, whatever, they've ever had. This is MUFON, this organization. Well, now, before they just released a picture of a UFO that was shot down. I don't know if this is the recent UFO. I don't know when this was shot down. This might be, but supposedly MUFON says this is absolutely real. And anyways, I'm just going to show you the picture. There's two pictures I'm going to show you. One, there it is. Supposedly, that is an unidentified flying object, non-human intelligence that was shot down. That picture. Take a look. And then there is another picture. And I don't even know what I'm looking at, but I'm just going to show it for historical purposes. There's the other picture. And I don't know if that's a close-up. But I'm going to leave that up there for a few seconds. Anyway, so I just wanted to show that at the end of the show. I don't know what it means, guys, gals. I don't know what it means. I'm not sure. I don't know if that UFO was shot down by Russia. It might have been one of those Alaska ones that were shot, supposedly, if you want to believe that. Thank you, Sean. I do appreciate it. Well, that is certainly conclusive. Greg is the next art bill. Okay. All right. We're going to leave the show just like that. We're going to leave it because now the show has gone pear-shaped. But I want to thank you all for your incredible generosity, your incredible phone calls, the great comments in the comments section. This has been a classic, epic PATC. College football peek around the corner. We've been on the air for 3 hours and 20 minutes. Please Please, if you haven't done so, please subscribe to our channel. Smash the like button if you like our content. And when you subscribe, have your notifications turned on. We might have to come on live again later tonight. We might have to. We might have to. Josh Pate says it's imminent. Imminent that we're going to be getting some breaking news within the next 9 Saturdays. The ACC is screwed, according to Josh Pate. It's going to be reconfigured. It's going to be reconstructed. Does this mean the SEC? Does this mean ESPN? Does this mean Jim Phillips? Does this mean Clemson and Florida State and the other ACC schools have found a way to make everybody whole? Maybe the SEC eats first, second, third, and fourth. And what does that mean for the Big Ten? We shall see. Buckle in, buckle up, brace for impact. We're going to go where the story goes. Today, it was about Josh Whitman, the Illinois athletic director, being worried, having meetings about further consolidation. And then the big story. Josh Pate gave us more information from a legal person on the legal side of things. The legal person told Josh Pate, it's a come-in. It is a come-in. Josh Pate believes it. It's imminent. The breaking news. Buckle up. Buckle up. Stay with us here at Peek Around the Corner as we talk everything college football. This Monday, we're going to be doing our Big Ten order of finish prediction. Big Ten. The Buckeyes number 1. Oregon number 2. Maybe. Possibly. Who's going to be number 3? Who's going to be number 18? All right. Thank you so very much. Again, make sure you are subscribed and you have your notifications turned on, because I got a feeling that we might be doing breaking news here. I might have to jump on live. Who knows? Who knows? Until next time, from all of us at PATC to all of you, please, you all take great care of each other. Thank you so very much.